Hi everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. Today is probably a one-off, but I'm going to be looking at tinfoil theories of A Song of Ice and Fire. This is something I don't normally do, but what I'm very keen to do is make sure that as a community in A Song of Ice and Fire, we don't just have this kind of groupthink, only ever thinking about the one right theory, keeping our minds open to the possibility that there might be other things going on that just everybody's missed. So what I've done is I asked, as I always do with my patrons, to just give me a list of their favorite tinfoil theories, and we'll just go through them. And most of this isn't, by the way, an attempt to just sort of like do down lots of different theories. I will say up front, most of the tinfoil theories we'll be going through I'll probably disagree with. But that doesn't mean that I think that there isn't any merit in them. Tinfoil theories is not an area that I usually go in, but I think it is important, and I think that there may well be some of these where there's a grain of truth that perhaps is going to grow when we get a bit more evidence in the last two books. So that's what we're going to be doing. Before we get into it, I just want to do a very quick thank you for last week. If you were watching this live stream live, you will know that we got a bit of a spam bot attack partway through it. A whole load of nasty stuff appeared in the live chat. We had to shut down and restart. But I wanted to give a huge thank you to my moderators in the chat. I think they're all here again today, both old and new. I created some new moderators as well in the process, and they did an exceptional job. So if you are in the live chat, please do give the moderators a little bit of love. Just as a sort of follow-up to that, today I'll play around with this and experiment a bit, but if you are in the live chat, I've set it to slow mode today just to see how that works. That means that there's a gap between the 30 seconds between comments, so you have to have a wait before you can comment something else. And I've tweaked another couple of things behind the scenes as well. But that's enough technical admin stuff. Hopefully we shouldn't get that a problem again today. But let's dig into this. We've got a whole lot of tinfoil theories to be working our way through, and as I said, I'm hoping that this can be quite fun, because some of these are things which we see around, and I want to take them seriously as well as just like enjoying the thinking behind them. Ryan Larkin first, just to say thank you very much for your super sticker before that, and also Sabrina Temi saying, I only acknowledge one Robert as king, and he is not a Baratheon. All hail King Robert IDG, first of his name, king of all, A Song of Ice and Fire, knowledge and live streams, long may you reign. Thank you, that's very kind. Okay, so let's get into these straight away. First of all, Abby saying, my tinfoil theory is that the children of the forest will help put Bran on the throne so that he can help them ruin the country of the men who ruined theirs. So this is, and I should probably say not all of these I would personally classify as tinfoil theories. A lot of these have actually got quite a strong basis in the information that we have already. So this does come, obviously we've got the TV show, which ended up with Bran on the throne. And after that, a lot of the A Song of Ice and Fire community went back, and I particularly remember Aziz from History of Westeros, friend of this channel, he went back through the books and discovered a huge amount of hints and foreshadowing that perhaps we hadn't always thought about. That do suggest that this was something that George R. R. Martin was planning all along. And all the hints are that this is indeed what he was planning all along. So that's now the central theory about what's going to be happening with Bran, is that he will end up as king. The issue here with this theory is whether that is not whether that's intentional on the part of the children of the forest. I think we can probably all buy into the idea that like Bloodraven was hooked up to the Weirwood network and has been not taken over, but he has been sucked up to be part of the Weirwood network. Bran probably will experience something along those lines as well, which means that he, in taking the throne, as and when he does, is doing this, whether it's said or not, and it probably won't be said explicitly to the people, as a representative or a part or a figurehead of the Weirwood network. That bit I can buy completely. The bit that I think that is slightly open for debate is whether this is intended to then destroy or wreak revenge. I think what the phrase that you used were ruin the country of the men. Now, yes, there is this history. We've got this history that humanity came in and they did ruin the country of the Children of the Forest. It was the Children of the Forest's land first, and humanity came in, chopped down the forests, burned the weirwoods, and they were ruining it. And the Children of the Forest, is this a long-term game that they've been playing to put their own king there, masquerading as a human, to take their revenge? Personally, I don't think we have the evidence yet for what the motivations of the Children of the Forest are. Perhaps only the same as with the others, is that we simply do not know what their intentions are. We can guess at them, though. So personally, I think that that's not just pure revenge on humanity. Doesn't appear to be what their game plan is. I think it is about preserving the world that they have got. So I think that is their main motivation rather than gaining revenge. But I think that there is a lot in this as a sort of a starting point. I will try and pick up as many things from the chat as I can as we go through. A super chat from Roman Lakovets saying, what is Euron's purpose in the story? It's not George R. R. Martin's style to have a supervillain just being cartoonishly evil, which Euron seems to be right now. I'm not sure there's a particular theory in there, but I don't think he is just being cartoonishly evil. I think he is this extra threat, an additional threat to humanity in a kind of nihilistic way. I think that that's what he is. I think he's not just there being cartoonish. I think that we've been building all the way up thinking there are these two big threats of ice and fire. Actually, there's a third that we also have to be worrying about. So I think that is his sort of purpose within the story. Lawler, could the Stepstones be like our Bering Strait, between which is the sort of the gap between Russia and Alaska, and that they were once an icy land bridge that melted over time? Okay. So we're not told. So the Stepstones are the hundreds, thousands of little islands between Dawn and the disputed lands, which are sort of connecting Westeros and Essos. Now, all we're told in the history of the world of Ice and Fire, various legends, is that the children cast the Hammer of the Waters, this amazing magic spell which severed what was once a land bridge between Westeros and Essos, and that all that was left was the Stepstones. Now, you're suggesting here that this was an icy land bridge that melted over time. Well, I mean, I think that's possible in the sense that all of the stories that we have from the Age of Heroes, the Dawn, the days, the time before that, that those are legends. And George R. R. Martin has said repeatedly that we shouldn't take these as literal truth, and we should just take them as myths, legends. There is some truth in them, but that's not exactly what happened. So from that, we can say that it's not exactly what happened, that the Children of the Forest cast a spell and destroyed the land bridge. So is one of the options that perhaps it was melted over time? Yeah, I think that's an option. I don't think we will get an answer to that, but I think that's definitely an option. I don't think that's tinfoil. I think that is bona fide possible. Manu saying, "Hi Robert, one of my theories is that Euron is going to blow the horn of winter atop the high tower, thus bringing down the wall. What do you think?" I actually talked about this very briefly with Z's History of Westeros when I was on his channel. I don't know what it was, a couple of weeks ago. Now, we were talking about The Forsaken, which is the pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter, which is a chapter from Aeron, Damphair, but we see Euron. So it's about Euron and what's going on there. And Aziz put forward this as a possibility. Now, and if Aziz put forward this possibility, I would have to say that there clearly is evidence for this. His argument is that Euron takes on a lot of what we see the Night King do on the show. That's actually Euron's. So it's actually the flip. If you think about it more properly, the Night King took on a lot of roles that Euron will have in the book, one of which is bringing down the wall. Now, something will bring down the wall. Probably. I mean, there's an outside chance there may be another way around this or under it or over it or something like that, but probably something will bring down the wall. The only thing we've been told that could bring down the wall is the Horn of Winter. The Horn of Winter, we're almost certain, is with Sam in Old Town. We're also almost certain that Euron will be attacking Old Town at some point. Now, all of those things do add up, therefore, to the fact that Euron will be in the close proximity of it. We also have the High Tower. We're told that from the top of the High Tower you can see the wall. That probably isn't literally true, but it may well be figuratively true, and so perhaps from the top of the High Tower you could impact what's happening at the wall. So I think this is possible. I think it's entirely possible. My personal feel is that if you were to have somebody to blow the Horn of Winter, the person who has got you have to say that the Horn of Winter is currently broken and it has to be fixed. And I think it was broken intentionally. That I think there's a reason why the Stark at the time was called Bran the Breaker. I think he intentionally broke the horn, and it is supposed to be blown by a particular person, I would guess. If this is so powerful that it can bring down the wall, raise giants from the earth, it probably is just a person who can do this. And who is the person you'd have to do this? Well, I think you've got 3-4 different possibilities. Maybe it's the rightful Stark king at the time. Maybe you might say it's the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. They're protecting the realms of men. Maybe it's the King Beyond the Wall. That's the only time we've heard of it being blown before. Was it by a king beyond the wall? Or maybe it's by the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. They are, after all, the leader of humanity south of the wall. My thought is that all of those, if you interpret them in one way or another, could be applied to Jon by the time this horn is blown. He could well be the Lord of Winterfell at that time if he gets legitimized by Robb's will, as we think that he was. Yes, he may well have sort of left the Night's Watch just before he was killed, but he is probably still going to be the extant Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, because certainly the people who killed him won't be able to take that over, and they may well not have a new leader, so he will probably still be their leader. Who is the king beyond the wall? Well, it's not Jon, but if anyone claims to be a leader of the wildlings, he may well be about to lead them down to Winterfell. Who is the rightful king of Westeros? Perhaps Jon. So my take is that probably symbolically Jon is the person to do this, but Euron could. I think that there is definitely a case that Euron could. Question from Boris Orozco. Greetings from Florida. Ice Sword Reforged new name. I assume this is talking about whether the sword, the great ancestral sword, Ice, the Stark sword, will be reforged. It's obviously currently, it was broken down into 2 swords. Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail, will it be reforged? My take is that thematically that would be great. Practically, I don't think it likely, because if you have two Valyrian steel swords, and you know that Valyrian steel swords are things that can kill the others, why on earth would you suddenly just turn it into one? You have two, keep two. Maybe afterwards you would reforge it, and if they do reforge it, the only name I think they could give it is Ice. Just call it back what it was again. Yes, I know there are lots of examples, not least in Lord of the Rings, of swords being reforged and given new names, but I think a favourite has to be Ice. Chaos Ballerina, props to the mods, absolutely. Also, Daario is an immortal, and the original Night's King was named Jon Snow. That's why it's considered an evil name by Ygritte. Okay, two big theories. Daario is an immortal is an interesting one. I haven't seen any evidence for this. There's lots of Daario is someone. I've got another Daario theory I will cover later on. My general take on this kind of like this actually quite minor character is really secretly someone else, or has got this secret and exciting backstory, is I don't think that's needed for the plot. I don't think it adds anything to the plot. It would add something to the world, certainly, but then it would almost be so big and important that it would overinflate what Daario's role is within the story. And Daario's role within this story is nearing its end, I would humbly suggest. So I don't personally think that. The original Night King's name was Jon Snow, and that's why it's considered an evil name by Ygritte. Well, again, this is possible. So then if we're talking about the Night's King, which is George R. R. Martin's version, this was a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and Old Nan sort of mutters that maybe he was a Stark. It would make sense for a Stark bastard to go to the Wall. That would absolutely make sense. So, and would that be why it's called an evil name? I mean, my take is that that's more about the dislike, the wildlings or the free folks' dislike of Southerners' ways of just like dismissing people because of their parentage. I think that's more what that's about. Might the original Night's King have been called Jon Snow? It's possible. I don't think we're ever going to find out, though. But I do like it. It's definitely a possible one. Poison Biscuits. Is the real many-faced god just the drowned god? So the many-faced god in Braavos, the faceless men's god in the House of Black and White, is their feeling is that it's not any of these other particular gods that are around, but this is how other people recognize the god. So that's what their understanding is. In terms of the real, I'm not of the view that we certainly won't get the gods revealed in any specific way. George R. R. Martin has told us that. And I'm not of the view that the reality of gods is going to be anything that we're going to touch on in any absolute way in this story. We're not going to get a clear linear understanding of what real gods means, where a lot of Euron's storyline is about debating whether gods actually really exist, and if they do exist, whether they have any actual power. Do they do anything? And his conclusion, it would appear, is that it doesn't really matter, because he can do what he wants and gods do not do anything about it. So I don't think that we're and I should probably say this is one of those moments when one of the bad guys in the Song of Ice and Fire seems to understand how the world works. Qyburn does, again, with his something lingers theory about the nature of life after death in this world. Euron seems to actually be right. He seems to understand that the gods do not, as George R. R. Martin has told us, the gods will not do direct action in this story. There will be lots of things that people will attribute to them, which may well be them, but no direct action that we can definitely say that was that god doing that thing. So I don't think we'll be able to say any god is a true god. What else have we got here? Question from Sebastian Holden. Hola, Robert. Hola. Will we ever learn why Bloodraven went beyond the wall? Was he lured or tricked through his dreams like Bran was? Please say one big dingus. There you go. Was he lured or tricked? Well, we don't know. We're not told why he went north of the wall. The clear implication is that this was intentional on his part to go. And we know that he was a magic user. We know that he was a warg and a greenseer. So it's all of the pointers are that he was summoned in some way. Joel Faulkner. Did Ned warg a pigeon? The big one, you say. P.S. Thanks for all the amazing content. Right, so I did. I think Mara Lee as well over on Patreon asked whether Ned warged into the birds. This is a theory that came up from season 1. I mean, it didn't really appear in season 1, but from the show rather than from the books is where this came, because you had the scene when Ned gets beheaded, and just before he does, Ned Stark looks up and he sort of seems to mutter something, and then his head gets chopped off, and then the camera pans away and you see some birds flying overhead. Now, at some point later on, somebody said, I think Ned is still alive because his family can walk, so probably he can, and so he saw them and he thought, this is my way to survive, is by walking into the birds. I don't personally buy this. I don't think. I mean, it's possible. We'll never find out. It won't impact on anything if that is what actually happened. But I think, as far as the books are concerned, none of that happened. So if you read it, we see this through Arya's eyes, and we don't actually see the moment of death, because Euron grabs her and just sort of, cover your eyes, don't look at me. He's stopping her, this young girl watching her father being killed. So we don't see that. We don't see birds flying overhead. We don't see Ned whispering anything. And Sean Bean, incidentally, was asked what he was doing, and he said, well, I just thought maybe he'd be uttering a prayer or something, so that was what I was doing. So he was not under the impression that was what was going on. So personally, Ned wargs a pigeon I think that's a no, but happy if anyone's got any evidence on that one. Elise, one of the many big characters, many of the big characters were born to mothers who died giving birth to them. Jon, Dany, Tyrion. Do you think by mothers dying in childbirth passes some blood magic onto their children, making them more powerful or special? Interesting thought. I mean, it's a good idea. There's magic most of the time, almost all of the time, requires sacrifice and intentionality in this world. That's almost all of the time. You can look at pretty much any bit of magic and somebody's intending to do magic and they are sacrificing something in some way. There's one obvious example that I'm still waiting for somebody to give me a great solution to, which is Beric's first resurrection. But almost every other kind of magic you can see, there are those two elements. So the dying mother presumably was not intending to pass on magic in some way or make them powerful in some way. So I don't think the intentionality is there. Added to which, the timelines are a little bit wavy because George R. Martin deliberately made it a little bit wavy, but all of the suggestions are that Lyanna died a week or two after giving birth, not straight away, but in post-birth complications. So I think not, but I do like the idea. What I would say is that I think that that it's intentional on George R. R. Martin's point that three of the main characters in his story, being Jon and Dany and Tyrion, all lost their mothers. I think that was definitely intentional on his part to give us some mirroring between those three characters. I wouldn't want to go any further than that, but I think that he was wanting us to see the similarities between them. Cloaked One, picking up something, I will say this, I always do, for Eminem Fox. I love it when people pick up on questions from other people in the chat. Even with the slow mode on, it's very hard to keep up with the chat. So thank you very much. This saying, Bran is all the Brans throughout history, the Blessed, the Builder, the Burner, etc., living his 1,000 lives while walking through time in the cave of the Three-Eyed Raven. This was a very popular theory 3 or 4 years ago, I would say. It's spurred on not only by the idea that Bran he can walk into people and he can go to different points in time, and there are quite a few times when particularly Old Man confuses Brans as if they are one and the same, and we like to take what Old Man says and see this as having some extra layer of understanding of how the world works. So is that true? I'm not willing to say no. It sort of died a death, I think, in the show, with the idea that the logical conclusion is that Bran was the Night King, was a Bran Stark, who then, because Old Man said that maybe the Night's King was Bran Stark, and therefore some people came up with the theory that the Night King is Bran, and that was proven wrong. So I think I'm of the opinion that we can't, as a book theory, we can't yet rule it out, but I think it is unlikely. I think that adds an extra layer onto what we think Bran's powers are, which doesn't mean that it's not possible yet. But what we know is that he can go back and see things through time. We know that he can walk into humans, but being different people and living entire lives at various points in history doesn't seem to play out. That's was he Bran Ned's brother as well, for example? There's no hints whatsoever that they're remotely the same character. So no, I think is the short answer, but I do like it. I don't think we can yet 100% say that there's not some grain of truth in that. Captain Anopheles. Hi, love the theme. The children of the forest destroyed the giant civilization and made them primitive as the giants were the old ones. Ooh. Discuss. Okay, so the giants seemed, as far as we can tell, the giants lived happily alongside the children of the forest before humans arrived, and indeed for a little while afterwards, and north of the wall lived happily with humans afterwards. So I don't think that there's much evidence that the giants, there is some evidence of giant civilization, for example, particularly over on Essos, some things that appear to have been built on giant scale. The Mazemaker's work springs to mind. So there is some evidence that perhaps there were giants spread across Planetos who had a more advanced civilization then than they do now. But there's also evidence that humans had a more advanced civilization long ago than they do now. So this is not a matter of there just being the giants were very powerful and then they weren't. and nobody else took over, and nobody else was the same. Everybody seems to sort of come down a notch over time. So I like the thinking, but I can't see the evidence for it. They seem to have been living at peace for a long time. They helped build the wall and things like that. Reflective Rambling for Rebecca Rivers. Thank you, Reflective Rambling. Tinfoil Hat Theory. Game of Thrones, after Bran starts unlocking his powers, is actually all a dream created by Bloodraven, a test after he failed on Euron. So after Bran starts unlocking his powers is all a dream. So from it depends when you mean from unlocking his powers, from that bit when Bran has his dream falling and then flying, all of this is a dream. I mean, I don't think we can say it's not, but I don't think it is. If we end up at the last page of this story, and George R. R. Martin ends it by saying, and it was all a dream, then I personally, and I suspect many other people, will pick up my copy of A Dream of Spring. I note the similarity in name and throw it across the room. I don't think that's what George R. R. Martin is going to do. I don't think this is all a dream, one of Bran's dreams. I think we may well see some sort of circular work with Bran in some way, but I don't think we're going to see that this entire thing has just been a dream. So nice idea, but I would be disappointed. Let's put it that way. King Gravity. My theory is that the others won't be defeated in a war for the Dawn, but that a pact will be forged between them and humanity. I think this is what happens during the first long night. So they won't be defeated in a war for the Dawn, but that a pact will be forged between them and humanity. I think this is what happened during the first long night. Okay, so I don't think... Well, I am fully subscribed to the idea that this, the conflict between the others and humanity, or the children of the forest, we're still not 100% sure in the books exactly what the others are after, but that conflict, I'm absolutely convinced, is not going to be ended by humanity having a big fight and winning it. This is not going to be pacifist. George R. R. Martin is not going to write a story where the resolution to the baddies coming to attack is, well, we'll just get a bigger and better army than them. That is not the way that this is going to pan out. This is going to be a matter, I think, of undoing the magic that created the others in the first place, in whatever way, shape, or form that is. In terms of a pact between them and humanity, I like the idea, but I think that we're still a long way from that. I don't think that in terms of the others at the moment are just this unrelenting force moving southwards. They have not yet been doing anything approaching the communication through symbols that we got so excited about in Game of Thrones, to no real end point, it has to be said. Yes, they do make patterns, ever the artists, as Mance Raider says, but we haven't been told what these patterns are or that they might mean anything, just that they exist. So in terms of communication to humanity or to the children of the forest, there isn't any, and communication is necessary before we get any kind of pact, because we can't have a pact if people can't communicate with each other. So I think where I would end up with that one is I agree that fundamentally this isn't going to just be about a big battle. What that end resolution is, I think, is still vaguely open. I think undoing the magic, given the fact that the big initial issue that we were told in this story was the issue of what has put the seasons out of balance, and what on earth are these others coming to attack the realms of men. That is the thing which needs to be dealt with, and I think that will be dealt with more by undoing whatever preternatural magical event we are told happened, rather than a pact. But I can't yet rule a pact out. Question from, or theory from King Gravity. Another smaller theory is that anytime giants waking from stone is referenced on the books, it means an earthquake, and perhaps that's how the wall will be broken when the horn is blown. Well, there's a lot in this. We're told two things about the Horn of Winter. We're told that it brings down the wall, and we're told that it raises giants from the earth. Now, we're told that it has been blown, and it didn't bring the wall down, which seems to imply that perhaps that isn't what it does, but raising giants from the earth does seem to be the case. Now, I've done a video a while back where I follow a train of logic that I won't go into in detail here, but the stone statues of the Starks in the crypts are giant. We're always told people are looking up to them. They're high above people. They seem to be large, and they would be giants coming up from the earth if they were roused. And I the more I think about it, the more I feel that this is a thing which will happen. The statues are anthropomorphized every single time they're mentioned. They're watching things, they're thinking about things, they're judging. People think that they're moving. This is every single time. George R. R. Martin is trying to tell us that these are not just cold dead statues, and we have imagery throughout this story of statues moving. We have the stone men as just one random example. We have Melisandre talking about dragons coming to life, stone dragons coming to life. We have Old Nan telling a legend about the Titan of Braavos coming to life to defend the city. This imagery is everywhere and has to mean something. Does it mean that there's going to be an earthquake and that will bring down the wall? It's possible. That is a very simple, straightforward understanding of giants from the earth, is about earthquakes. Yeah, I can't dispute that. But my own logic takes me to the point that giants from the earth is actually stone statues from the crypts coming up from the earth. Michael Wayne, hi Robert, first time watching live. Welcome, and welcome to anyone watching live for the first time. I've been watching your videos for years. Really happy to be a new patron. Well, welcome to being a patron as well. No question. I just wanted to say you're an absolute gem. Keep up the great work. Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Briscoe Field, hey Robert, is it possible that Rhaegar had a vision of Aegon, and that's why he thought his son was the prince who was promised? It's actually a Blackfire that looks like him. So is it possible? Yes, we're told very little about what Rhaegar did and thought and why he came to the conclusions that he did. What we do know is that he read something in an old scroll, an old book, and that led him to think that he was the prince that was promised. Then he thought it was his son who was going to be the prince that was promised, and then we had that vision that Dany has in the House of the Undying when he's there and he's holding Aegon, his son, and thinking that and saying he is the prince that was promised. So that's what his thinking seems to be, and his original thinking seems to have come from the books rather than a vision or anything. But could he have seen Aegon, and I think you're meaning Fagon, and that's why he thought his son was the prince who was promised? Does seem to imply that perhaps he might see a vision of him as an adult and think that that means that he is going to be the prince that was promised. I'm not 100% sure. I do, and this is a complete random. This is my own little. Is it a tinfoil theory? I'm not entirely sure, but connected to this, he looks and he seemingly gazes at Dany in that vision that Dany has, And that's the point at which he says there must be one more. And him looking at her as a grown-up, perhaps he sees a grown-up female Targaryen, and that is what he's expecting from his third child, because he is naming his children, it would appear, after the three original Targaryen conquerors. So he's expecting his third child to be female. So that, and it's entirely possible that he sees in vision form Dany as she in vision form sees him. I hope that makes sense and it's not too existential. Cloaked One, picking up for Austin Flowers. What do you think transpired in the couple of hours preceding the press release of the pink letter? In terms of the couple of hours preceding the press release of the pink letter, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by the preceding the press release of the pink letter. If you're asking what happened after it got received, then I think John just very much was sucked in by the goading and wanting to get back to Winterfell. But I suspect I've misunderstood the question, in which case I do apologize. Deborah Pollard. Hi, Robert. You can add another making dinner while I listen to the tally for me. Well, I hope you're having a lovely dinner in a moment. My question this week, is there a theory on how Lyanna dies, or are we to assume it was in childbirth? Yeah, so the theories... The main theory is that this is post-childbirth complications, and I will leave it to the midwives, doctors, nurses, whoever in the chat who will, I'm sure, know the technical terms for this. But whereas in a lot of the modern world we're in now, childbirth and afterwards is not as life-threatening. Back in medieval times, it was. Lots and lots of women died. And when we say in childbirth, it's not just when the child is being born, but they get infections from that, for obvious reasons. Infection is a huge issue at that time, and lots of women did die a few days, a week or two after birth, and that is the main prevailing theory about what caused her death. As with a lot of George R. R. Martin, it's not a it's an answer that is grounded in quite a lot of realism, quite gritty realism. Judy Wright, thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you, I really appreciate that. Think, is that me caught up in the chat? Nope, I've got a couple more. Oh, hang on. No, I have got quite a few more. Apologies, I'm just trying to find out where I got up to. Right, I think the chat has moved so quickly that I may have missed one or two. If I have, I do apologize. I will try and get back to them. Your Last Great Knight says, it seems Gandalf did not have a plan for the two quests he started. I think the only plan he had was stealth. Do you think the small part of him preferred stealth due to his initial fear of Sauron? Well, I'm focusing mainly on this one, on the Song of Ice and Fire, but yes, you're right, he did not have a huge plan for all the way through, but what he did have was he had foresight. I'm going to do videos on this at some point soon, but he had foresight and understanding, a hazy outline about what would happen, and he could, to the extent that he could say to Thorin, I don't know exactly why, but I can just tell you, if you take Bilbo Baggins along with you, your mission will be a success. If you don't, it will not. So he had that kind of level of understanding, this understanding that Gollum had a role to play for good or ill, so he understood that things would be there, so he didn't have to have a detailed plan. But yeah, I think in terms he always preferred stealth rather than fighting. Cloaked One, for question for Mark Daniel. Thank you very much. Saying, tinfoil theory, Benjen Stark killed the other men on his ranging and deserted. Yeah, I hope not. I hope not. I believe he is still alive. Um, but could he have killed the other people in his ranging? I mean, we got 2 rangers there who were got by the others. Might he have gone over to the others? I don't think we've got any hint that that was what he was about. My personal best feeling is that he carried on searching for the things that he knew he had to search for. Everybody who knew him best, just they were sure he wouldn't die. He knew where he was. They saw more slashes in the woods of where he'd been. He did seem to have survived longer than the 2 dead bodies we saw. Sydney Rose, based on Martin's musings on dark-skinned dragon lords, I think humans evolved from near-human creatures. As the continents broke up, they adapted to cold swamps, forests, etc., creating diverse human colorings and features. Well, yeah, we don't have any sort of Darwinian theory of where humans came from in Planetos, and I think that's quite deliberate on George's part. I think he's trying to keep it quite high level, and every culture or most cultures have their own origin story theory of where humanity came from, whether it was the Dothraki with the coming up out of the womb of the world or whatever. So I think that we have a lot of different legends, but we're never going to find out this one. I mean, I like the idea that and that perhaps humans evolved, but I don't think that George R. Martin is going to take us that deep into sort of the scientific history of it. Verus Aurelius, the great other is Morgoth. Westeros is the realm that the Valar trapped him in. Others looking for the prince was promised as a way to destroy the Weirwood network cage and free Morgoth. Wow, this is quite a meta. This is tinfoil, the meta Lord of the Rings, The Song of Ice and Fire crossover tinfoil. I love it. Don't think it's true, but I love it. The Morgoth, for those who do not know, this is the original big bad of Tolkien's world. He was the fallen angel, the kind of the Lucifer equivalent in Tolkien's world, and Sauron was his lieutenant, his chief lieutenant. So he got cast down into the void, we're told, and put into chains. So is Westeros the void? I mean, I don't think so. I like it. It's a great idea, but I don't think so. Tobias Gulk, tinfoil. Robert is secretly George R.R. Martin. The Winds of Winter is only delayed because Robert's YouTube channel is distracting him from writing. Tobias, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. I can confirm for you now that I am not George R.R. Martin. Thank you very much. Repave, sorry for the random Lord of the Rings question, but how did Gimli know about Durin's Bane while Gandalf did not know there was a Balrog in Moria until later? Well, so okay, we'll come back. I'll give as concise an answer to this one as possible for bringing back to A Song of Ice and Fire tinfoil. But Durin's Bane is a Balrog, the Balrog that we see. The history of that Balrog is that was roused from the earth by the dwarves, Gimli's ancestors delving too deep. It came up, killed Gimli, lots of dwarves, and the rest of them had to flee. It is then this great figure in dwarvish imagination, Durin's Bane, this great horror that kicked them out of their land, effectively their homeland, which is under the mountain. Under the mountains. It's under 3 mountains, actually, Moria. But so Gimli recognized it from all the stories and the legends that he had been told about when they saw it there. Gandalf will have known those legends, but people hadn't. I mean, they hadn't ventured down there. Balin had gone down there, and they sort of lost track. They didn't really want to go that way because they didn't know, was the Balrog still there? What was Durin's Bane still there? were the orcs still there, this was not the optimal plan. Aragorn and Gandalf spent most of that first bit of journey debating about where to go, not wanting to go that way. So that's the sort of the breakdown, is that Gandalf knew the stories, Gimli knew the stories, Gimli only recognized it when it appeared in front of them. I have more questions somewhere, if I can just find them. So Lady Pushkins, Old Man says, don't listen to it. All crows are liars. Do you think Bloodraven should be included in this? Well, Bloodraven, yes. Bloodraven does lie. I don't think there's much doubt in that. And actually, if you try and think about it from a very real perspective, a very sort of grounded perspective, Bran is this child. He was a 6-year-old boy at the very beginning of this story, and this ancient old man is manipulating him from afar to get him to travel all the way to the far north, away from his friends and family. This is actually quite a dark tale. Should he be trusted? Well, did Bran go up there thinking that he was about to go off and be a tree wizard? No. He went up there thinking that he was going to learn how to fly. He was going to learn how to walk again. And this was what he was thinking. So at the very least, Bloodraven has been willfully misleading Bran as he has been heading up there, and hiding the truth from him, even if he wasn't deliberately lying to him. More questions. I hope I've not lost. Here we go. Caught back up again, I think. Cloaked One picking up for Taya Thornhill. Arya will give her mother, Lady Stoneheart, the gift of mercy. Seeing what her mum became helps her turn away from her dark path. Yeah, I've covered this on a live stream a little bit before. I can't remember what the subject was. Lady Stoneheart, pardon me. Lady Stoneheart, I think, as a character, has a finite end in terms of the point of the character. She is there. All that is left of Cat Stark is this desire for vengeance, a need to gather her children, and a desire for vengeance on the Freys for what they did. So once she has got revenge on the Freys, once she discovers that Bran and Rickon are not both dead as she thinks they are, once she knows that Sansa and Arya are both safe, then what has been driving her, which is what is keeping her alive, will be gone, and so she will be willing to die properly. So the question is, how does that happen? Might it be Arya? It could. It definitely could. And I do like this kind of logic of the character that Arya, I think certainly, is not going to go down to the dead, dark place of just being a mindless assassin at the end of all of this. There will be things which cause her to stop, and seeing what just having vengeance in your heart does, which is what Lady Stoneheart is, that will almost certainly be a really good way for her to turn around and start building back towards a semblance of humanity. So yes, I like the theory. I don't think that we can say it's nailed on by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it definitely would work within the realms of the story framework that we've got. Elise, I think Fagon is a descendant of Aegor Rivers and Calla Blackfire. Additionally, this could be Bloodraven's motivation to control history and make Jon king, his hatred for his half-brother Bittersteel. Okay, I think Fagon is definitely a Blackfire. I think that's probably through Sarah, Illyrio's lover, wife. My take on Bloodraven's hatred of the Blackfires is it's actually the starting point of him, or a major part of him, pruning the Targaryen family tree. This is so dark, but I did a video on this if you're interested. Bloodraven wants, and as we can see, he sent the Woods Witch. He wants people to believe in the line of the prince that was promised, which has a very specific magical inheritance, and that means getting rid of all of the other parts of the Targaryen family tree who could possibly be rulers, so that it's just focused in down and on that one line that he wants, which has got the exact right mix of Targaryen blood and eventually Stark blood. Now, that means that he personally killed 4 or 5 Blackfires at his there was the great council that made sure that the crown passed, that he presided over, that made sure that the crown passed over several more Targaryens. There were 2 or 3 that had strange deaths that just seem a bit, I'm not sure about, choking on a lamprey pie, things like that. Through that period, there was a 20 to 30 year period when Bloodraven was Hand of the King, where the Targaryens died at a rate of nearly 1 a year through strange circumstances or through Bloodraven actively making sure that it happened. So that is what I think is going on there. I think that Aegon is a Blackfire, but because we're very pointedly told that the Blackfires have died out in the male line, but that does leave open the possibility that they're still alive in the female line. Brendan Stark saying, "Hi Robert, I'm excited to see any new content on your channel. Howland Reed is the High Sparrow. Any thoughts? Can't he be glamoured by some kind of Children of the Forest glamour magic?" Right, so now this is the kind of thing where I'm sure I've read this theory somewhere, so there may well be some evidence I'm unaware of. But in all of these things, you have to come back to, do they make sense within the story, as in, is there evidence for this, and motivations, character. Now, on the first part of that, is there any evidence within the story? I don't know of anyone. It's possible that there are some hints somewhere that I've completely missed, but I can't, off the top of my head, think of any. Characterization and motivation. Why on earth, in my mind, would Howland Reed wish to be the High Sparrow? What is the High Sparrow currently doing? The High Sparrow is causing chaos in King's Landing, is making sure that the powers that be that rule over the 7 kingdoms are not focused on what's going on in the north. They are focused on what is happening down in King's Landing. That's what the High Sparrow is doing right now. So is that what Howland Reed wants? Howland Reed is effectively working for the Weirwood Network, for Bloodraven. That seems to be what he's about. What do they want? They're wanting to be protecting people against the others. They're not wanting the South to be turning in on itself and fighting itself. So from a character and motivation perspective alone, I don't think that makes sense to me. But I'm very happy if there are other bits of evidence that I've missed on that one. I'm very happy to read about them. King Gravity saying, to add to the potential pact theory, this is the idea that the others and humanity will have a pact to end this second long night. I think the others may have helped in the building of the wall, or in fact, the first long night. I think the others may have helped in the building of the wall, as ice magic seems to be their area of expertise. Yeah, I like that. But what I would say is that the wall, I think we need to draw a line of distinction between the physical barrier and the magical barrier. We're told that the magic is in the foundations of the wall. That's not the ice, that's the foundations of the wall. When the wall was built, it was just a normal height wall, we're told. I mean, maybe quite a high wall, but not the crazy thing we've got at the moment. It was the Night's Watch who generation after generation added to the height, added. So it is not intended to be an ice barrier. That is not what it is. It was not created as this ice barrier, so it is not therefore ice magic. It is a magical barrier that there happens to be a physical barrier along as well. So that's what that is. And that, for me, if you take the logic the step back, implies that this isn't ice magic, therefore it does not require the others to have been involved in its creation. Kendra Summers, theories. Daenerys feeds Aegon to Drogon, and Bloodraven takes control of Bran. Okay, good theories. Daenerys feeding Aegon to Drogon. I think that certainly Daenerys and her Slayer of Lies, this is one of the things which we get from the House of the Undying, Slayer of Lies, the clear implication is she will be the person who will show that Aegon is not a Targaryen. Now, how can you do that? Well, unless you go through some kind of nerdy paternity test type thing, or the medieval equivalent thereof of going through lineages, then I think the way is to say, okay, proper Targaryens can approach dragons, those who are pretending cannot. And so I don't think she's going to set Drogon on him, but I think that there is every likelihood that he will himself, believing that he is Aegon. I suspect that he has been told this and genuinely believes that this is the case, will approach and he will get burned. I think that's what's going to happen, and that will be how he will be shown not to be who he claims to be. Bloodraven takes control of Bran. I don't think it's quite as clear cut as that. I think it's the Weirwood network who are within Bloodraven and Bran. So Bloodraven is just adding himself to the Weirwood network as a whole. 26, Argyle, thank you for the super chat. I didn't see a question attached to that one. Perhaps the moderators can pick that one up if there was one. Kim Sandberg, Bloodraven delays George. It's all in his plan. That is not tinfoil. That's true. If in doubt, blame Bloodraven. Think, am I caught up? No, of course I'm not caught up. Every time I scroll down just to see whether I've caught up, I appear not to. Okay, let's go to Misting. Tinfoil theory. Tyrion will use a glass candle to find Tysha. Okay. So this is his first wife, who was Tywin, and Tyrion still thinks about, and he's still wondering where she is and what's going on. He will use a glass candle to find her. I mean, he could, but we then have to ask, where is he going to find a glass candle? We don't know about them being in Meereen. We know that there was one, at least, that Marwyn the Mage, Archmaester Marwyn, had, but he's certainly left at least one of them back in Old Town. He left it burning when he went off to go to Daenerys. Maybe he brought one with him. We do not know. So, yeah, he may, but we don't. The two things are, we don't know how he would get hold of a glass candle, and secondly, how do you use them? We do not yet know. What degree of intentionality do you have to have? Can you just look through it and find a person, or can you just connect up with one other person? It's not 100% clear. It may well be the kind of thing that you have to get good at, and therefore have to have some sort of magical abilities. C Star, thank you for the super chat message retracted. I don't know if there's a question there. Again, moderators, if you could pick up on that one. Apologies if I miss any questions, by the way. I will try and pick up anything I miss next week. Sebastian Holden saying, "Hi Robert, if you haven't already, can you please check out the Naked Knight theory and give your thoughts? Your theory on Hardhome is fantastic." Well, thank you very much. The Naked Knight theory, I do not know off the top of my head, but I will happily go and investigate that after this. RC Star, I've got the question here. Just saying, first up, love you, Rob. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Second, if Melisandre is Shira Seastar, if Melisandre is Shira Seastar, could she have brought Daemon Blackfyre back to life, as he is now the Night's King who must face Bran because Bloodraven is living a second life in him? Okay, so I don't believe Melisandre is Shira Seastar. I think that Shira Seastar is Quaithe, personally. I think that's what's going on there. Melisandre, we have had a POV chapter for her now, and now we do have a memory from her as a child being sold as a slave. And if that's real, and it certainly seems to be real, and certainly ties in with this idea that she came up through the Red Temple as a Red Priest, then that certainly seems to go against the Shira Seastar idea, because she definitely wasn't, as a child, sold as a slave. She was brought up in court in Westeros. So I don't personally buy the idea that Melisandre is Shira Seastar. Could she have brought Daemon Blackfyre back to life, and he's now the Night's King who must face Bloodraven, but must face Bran because Bloodraven is living a second life in him? That's great idea. The Daemon Blackfyre Bloodraven rivalry from long ago, I think is it may well get some echoes in the future. Personally, I think that the echoes that we're getting are the Shira Seastar and Bloodraven echoes, that they have both found a champion to fight that they think is the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai reborn, whatever you wish to call them. They think they've both found the person, but they're on different continents and aren't in contact and don't know this. And Bloodraven has found Jon and is championing him. Shira has found Dany and is championing her. So I think that's what's going on with the sort of the echoing of that previous era. Question from Matthew Kidd. The Weirwood network has a processing node at Winterfell, and the waste heat from all that computation heats the hot springs. Thoughts? Okay. So this links in. I have got a question. I'm going to pick up this a little bit more. I have a question somewhere from one of my patrons about the extent to which there might be an underlying sci-fi thing going on here, which I think is a fantastic theory. George R. Martin did originally write more sci-fi than he did fantasy. So maybe, and it has to be said, a lot of classic science fiction, classic fantasy stories, high fantasy stories, have actually got an underlying fallen civilization kind of feel to them, where there is technology. Book of the New Sun, Gene Wolfe is a classic example. The Shannara story is another example. This happens in a lot of stories where you have an old civilization which has disappeared, but you have the remnants of it, and what has come up since now is a fantasy world built upon a previous sci-fi world. Is there a possibility that there's a processing node at Winterfell and the waste heat from that computation heats the hot springs? I think no, but I do like the idea. The Jack of Hearts. Hi, Robert. Hope you're well. Was wondering, in what ways are you most similar to and most different from your namesake King Robert Baratheon? How am I most similar to and different from? I think how am I similar to him? Probably not in very many ways. I wouldn't have thought. I do enjoy a glass of wine, that perhaps not to the same extent that he did. In terms of differences, I suspect I'm not the kind of person to set up a rebellion and take on the realm and kill many thousands of people in that process. Just as an aside, I'm doing a reread of Book One, Game of Thrones, at the moment, and or re-listen, not listened to it before from the audiobook. I just earlier today was listening to the last chapter when Robert was dying, and what is very noticeable that I hadn't picked up on before, and this is one of a wonderful thing when you just hadn't noticed something before. He has almost a deathbed conversion, does Robert Baratheon. He says to Ned, okay, I know I was a bad king, but actually I said go off and dispatch people to kill Daenerys. I shouldn't have done that. Can you try and stop that now? I wasn't a good dad to my sons. Can you, or to my children, can you try and make sure that Joffrey is a bit better? Because, I felt he actually has some sort of contrition. Yes, it's deathbed and all the rest of it, and he didn't do any of this in his life, but he becomes a lot more sympathetic a character in those last few pages of his life than in all the rest of it. It has to be said. Cloaked one for Thomas de Kirschmecker. Food theory. Love it. Great intro. Sansa loves lemon cake. Lemon Cloak has a lemon cake. Frey pies are already being made. Murder zombie stroke mother Lady Stoneheart will give Sansa lem pie. Oh, wow. Okay, so Frey pies are a thing, no doubt about that. Sansa giving Lady Stoneheart giving Sansa lem pie. So lem is on Lady Stoneheart's side. As I say, I knew I'd take these far too seriously. That was a great question, by the way, and a great theory. I should probably just say that. But to take it more seriously than perhaps you intended it, Lem is on Lady Stoneheart's side. I fully subscribe to Lady Gwyn's theory that this is actually Richard Lonmouth, and he is sympathetic, one would have thought, out of any of the actors in this whole thing. He is sympathetic to the Stark cause, certainly not the Lannister side. So I don't think, and why would Lady Stoneheart feed Sansa some? Anyway, that's a no from me on that one. David Helmer, silly question. Is there a character that died in the book who you feel might have a chance of surviving in the book? Is there a character that died in the book who you feel might have a chance of surviving in the book? If you mean a character who died in the show who might have a chance of surviving in the book, I'm not sure. I think most of the people who died probably will die. I think there are some, like, say, Jorah, who could survive but probably won't. So Barristan ditto could survive but probably won't. It's the smaller characters who they just got rid of. Missandei, I think, is probably a good shout. We won't have that same scene that they had on the show of, like, her being beheaded in front of Dany. That's not going to happen. So I would go for her, I'll say. Okay, any more questions in the chat? Oh, yeah, one or two more. Yeah, I always find that there are more questions than I expect. Okay, here we go. Let's go with question from E. Marty. Euron walks the Dusky Woman to blow the hell horn and claims Viserion. I love your streams. Well, thank you very much. Right, so Euron walking the Dusky Woman to blow the hell horn and claiming Viserion. First up, I 100% believe that Euron is walking into the Dusky Woman. Euron wants to know what's happening with Victarion's mission, and he gave the Dusky Woman to Victarion as a gift. And so and the Dusky Woman has had her tongue cut out, which is a very much a Euron thing. And I think that it's entirely likely that, yes, she is going to be Euron's eyes in this. Now, also, Euron clearly has a plan. And his plan is that whoever blows it, and I'm sure he's expecting Victarion to at least realize that he shouldn't blow it himself, but whoever blows it, so it will still be owned by Euron. That's the plan. Now, there is something I need to get back into the detail of this because it's been a little while since I looked at it. But there was a time when Moqorro, who understands the glyphs on the side and is also not to be trusted by Victarion, but Victarion is not as George R. Martin said, he's not the, I can't remember what he said, he's as thick as a stump, I think is what he called him. So he doesn't realize this, but Moqorro says that you need to put your own blood onto it as a sort of a blood sacrifice to bind it to you, and Victarion's kind of waves his hand. And I think he said, I'd have to come back to the detail of this, I think he said, we'll just use her blood. If so, that would just be linking it back to Euron through her. Now, is his plan that Dusky Woman blows it? Possibly. We don't yet know, but I think that the main idea is that whoever blows it, and I think this has to be Euron's plan, is that whoever blows it, he has got the original magical bond with it through whatever magic he's already cast, and that will mean that whoever blows it, the dragon will come under the control of Euron. Cloaked one for Omar Foster. Hi, Robert. Love the channel. Thank you very much. What do you think is the biggest tinfoil theory that will be revealed to be true in the Winds of Winter? I don't see. The thing is, it depends on what you count as being a tinfoil theory in this. Certainly something about what Euron's up to is going to be proven right. Whether that's and because we know so little about Euron and what he's going to do, everything around him has to be sort of tinfoil. So we already had a bit earlier the idea that maybe he's going to blow the Horn of Winter and bring down the wall. That we don't have any huge evidence for that yet, so you could count that as tinfoil. That may happen. I personally don't think it will, but it may happen. Similarly, the Cersei sort of joining up with him and therefore being the woman we see in the visions, in Aaron's visions, could be, I think that could well happen. So I think something around Euron is definitely going to be the case. But the other thing I wonder is that George R. R. Martin, he doesn't say much these days about what's going to be in the Winds of Winter, but he did a few years ago, he did publicly say, oh, there is one character who's dead on the show, but alive in the books that I'm thinking of doing a big plot twist with. And then a year later he said, yeah, I decided I am going to do a plot twist with that person. And that obviously led to lots of theories about who this character might be. The two most likely, I think, are Stannis and Sir Barristan. So I think that perhaps the Sir Barristan is going to abandon Dany and go over to Fagon's side. That sounds like the kind of thing that could happen. I'm not saying any of these things will happen, but that seems quite a reasonable tinfoil guess. Okay, question or theory from Cameron. Peter Baelish is Robb and Sansa's real father. It's why we never see if they are really wargs and why Sansa pretends to be his bastard child. Okay, interesting. So, I think the answer to this is no. Peter Baelish is not Robb and Sansa's real father. The reason being that we have, well, lots of reasons. We have lots of Catelyn POVs when she's thinking about Peter Baelish, and that never seems to be anywhere near this. Robb, we know that when he was conceived, he was conceived in that 2 weeks after the wedding between Ned and Cat. Peter Baelish was well away from Riverrun by that point. He was not welcome in Riverrun at that time. And she says that she had not seen him since that point, so he could not have been Sansa's father either. So nice thought, but I think we can be reasonably clear on that one. That one's a no. Shetland Apache, what evidence would you use to refute the idea that all mutes are ridden by skin changes? All mutes are ridden by skin changes. I mean, I don't know if I can. There are a lot of people who are mute in the story. We have Ellen Payne, we have Euron's entire crew who are mute. Are they? And then obviously we get Hodor, who is effectively mute. He just says that one word, and he is ridden by a skin changer. Is there any evidence that the others are? I mean, I personally would put the emphasis the other way around, rather than evidence to refute the idea that all mutes are ridden by skin changes. I would say, is there any evidence that all mutes are ridden by skin changes? Is there any evidence that Ilyn Payne is? No, I can't see any evidence there. What about Euron's crew? Well, they all seem very loyal, but there's no evidence that it extends beyond that. The Dusky Woman, as I say, I personally think she probably is. There does seem to be some sort of character clues going on there, and Hodor, I think there probably is, but all I don't think that there's any evidence that that's the case. So I put that one the other way around. I'd want evidence that there are that all mutes are being ridden by skin changes rather than the other way around. Mindorgus Matulitis, apologies for mispronouncing your name. Penny is a daughter of Tyrion and Tysha, possibly with some brutal ending at some point. Okay, so Penny is another dwarf who Tyrion meets in the books. Tysha is his first wife. Might she be his daughter? I don't know what age she's at, given as in the books, so that probably is a limiting factor. Could she be? I mean, she could, but I mean, I don't think so. I do quite like this idea that Tysha is the sailor's wife up in Bravos. And she has Lyanna as a daughter, which sounds very much like Lannister. So I instinctively go more for that rather than the idea that Penny is. But I can't say no. But I don't think it's likely. Right. What other questions have we got going on here? Okay, question from Mod Mary. My theory is Arya will give the death of Mercy to Lady Stoneheart. Yeah, we covered this one a little bit earlier, actually, Mod Mary, so I won't go into it too much detail again, but I think that the name Mercy is also another bit of a supporting evidence here. Yes, she has the name Mercy in the pre-release chapter of The Winds of Winter, and so maybe that's going to give a hint to her future. So my conclusion on Arya killing Lady Stoneheart was that it's certainly possible, and Lady Stoneheart's story will come to an end at some point. And it would be appropriate, perhaps, for it to be a mercy killing from Arya. Donald Peoples, what's your take on the Littlefinger hired Jaqen to kill Ned on the trip up to the wall theory? Well, I did an entire video on this one, Donald, if you want to check out my long answer on this one. But my short answer is yes, I think he did. You have to ask the question, why is was Jaqen in the black cells. And then you also have to ask the question of what was Littlefinger's backup plan. So Littlefinger wanted Ned dead. There is no doubt in my mind about this. If he had allowed Ned to go all the way up to the wall, then by the time he got past the neck, he could tell people what was happening. Littlefinger betrayed me. He could explain everything that was going on, and that would ruin any chance that Littlefinger ever had to gain the trust or affections of Cat or indeed of Sansa. And that was what was driving him. So he could not in any way allow that to happen. Now, the first possibility, obviously, was what actually happened, that he would get beheaded. But Varys had managed to negotiate, and Sansa had pleaded for the idea that Ned be given clemency and be sent up to the wall. Littlefinger couldn't allow that. He could not allow that to happen. So my guess is that he hired Jaqen on the understanding that if Ned was sent up to the wall, then he should kill him. Why else would the Faceless Man be in there? Because that is where Littlefinger knew those people would be taken up to the wall with the next lot of people going to the Night's Watch. He would be with Ned. So that is the logic. If you want more detail on that, I promise you there is more detail on that, then please do go and check out the video. It was a long time ago, probably 3 years ago now, but it was called Why Was Jaqen in the Black Cells, or Why Was Jaqen in King's Landing, something along those lines. About Devlop, thank you, saying, do you think Arya will use the face of Jaime to fulfill the Valonqar prophecy? I definitely used to think that. And I may still do. I think that Jaime will kill Cersei in the end. At the very least, I think they will die at the same time. Now, I felt that the other option was Arya, who, as little sister, if we're assuming that High Valyrian is gender neutral, as is the sort of the hints that we've been given, then the little brother, which is what Valonqar means, might also mean little sister, which is Arya. So she could, as Cersei is on her kill list, she will be trying to kill Cersei. And the way to do this would be perhaps to disguise herself as someone else. So I certainly thought a while ago that perhaps a good logical way for this to happen would be for Arya to disguise herself as Jaime and then kill Cersei Lannister. I now think that it's more likely that Jaime just kills Cersei, and Arya isn't anything to do with it. I think Arya will turn around from her dark path before she gets to the last couple of names on her list. And the last couple of names on her list will be the Mountain and Cersei, I suspect. The others she'll probably get to, or someone else will get to. Cloaked One for Mistman Jones. In the Battle of Old Town, could we see the legendary Deep Ones in combat? I don't think so. I like the theory. I think that the Deep Ones are, they're Lovecraftian. The idea is these were here, these ancient, hideous, unfathomable creatures from the depths, not just literally from the depths, but also from the depths of time. I don't think we're going to see them appearing in this. I think that we're going to see Krakens, and I think we'll see lots of other crazy bits of magic happening all over the place, probably even when they get to Old Town, probably even a dragon. But I don't think we're going to see the old ones or the Deep Ones. I think that these are going to be kept as a literary nod to another fantasy writer. Smith Crazy saying, hey Robert, love the irreverence of this stream. Yeah, irreverent, that's me. My only tinfoil idea is that George R. R. Martin dragging the book release out is he's doing a play on the lamp chops sing-alongs, the song that never ends. Yeah. I mean, it's coming, guys. It's nearly here. I can't. I've given up guessing on timelines, but he has been writing it, and all the time he's writing it, it's getting bigger and it's getting better. That's all I can say on the subject. I fingers crossed for some good news quite soon, but I'm not making any predictions. Susan Dunkel, oh, thank you for so much. Very generous super chat, saying, hi, Robert. Cheers on 4 years as a patron supporter. 4 years, wow, thank you. One of the longest running patrons I have. Yeah, I hugely appreciate it. Thank you, Susan. George R. R. Martin is keen in telling us how prolific House Frey is, but Stoneheart with Red Redding 2.0, as well as the North with the Battle of Ice, look to be trying their best. Yeah. House Frey, there are lots of members of House Frey. And George R. R. Martin is very open about this. But they are falling. They're falling in the north. The Manderleys are getting rid of the Freys in the north. There's going to be the Battle of Ice, which is when... So Roose Bolton has sent out the Manderleys and the Freys to take on Stannis. This isn't going to go the way he expects because the Manderleys will take on the Freys, and the Frey army there will be destroyed, almost certainly. In the Riverlands, we get not just Lady Stoneheart, but also Nymeria's wolf pack, super wolf pack, have been killing off Freys as well. So yes, I think that we will probably end up with a couple of Freys still hanging around. We talked last time about Lord Rosby's ward, which is possibly a Frey, but most of them will be gone, I think. Cloaked One for Swagger Dagger, thank you. Do you think Euron will end up getting used by a much darker force, end up a blithering, babbling shell of a man twitching in the corner once his brain has been fried by said force? I mean, he's running in danger of that kind of thing, but I don't think so. I think he's going to be this force of crazed nature running through the last 2 books. I think that he will dabble in some pretty horrendous and bizarre things, but I don't think he's going to end up being overtaken by any of them. If I had to guess, then I love the imagery that George R. R. Martin has already given us of a dragon battle above the God's Eye Lake, with one of the dragon riders having one eye, Aemond one eye, Euron one eye, that, and then both dragons dying and crashing down into the waters. That, as an image, we could look back on that and say that was heavy foreshadowing from George R. R. Martin. I think at the moment that's my favourite idea for Euron's fate. Kissy Teeny, thank you so much for the super sticker. I hugely appreciate that. Derek Zermond, again, thank you. Didn't see a question attached to that, but thank you very much. Dan Leiber saying, do you think Tom Bombadil could appear in the Lord of the Rings Amazon series? Can you tell me a bit more about him? What do you believe Tom and Gandalf discuss? Well, I'm trying to keep this one to A Song of Ice and Fire, but I will quickly answer that. Will he appear in the Amazon series? He will be around during that period, the Second Age. Incidentally, they've just announced, they being New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers, have announced that they're doing a Rohirrim-based animation film, which is amazing, based in the Third Age. So we don't know many details about this yet, but this, if you want more, go and check out my Twitter, because I've tweeted out a link to it. But if you're into the Lord of the Rings, this is epic news, and is also really intriguing because it shows us that whereas Amazon have got the rights clearly to the second age of Middle Earth, then Warner Brothers and New Line clearly still have rights to produce things in the third age being the age of the stories that we know, The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So, complete digression, but that's a big development, literally just an hour or so before we went live here. Tom Bombadil was alive during that time in the Second Age, so he could theoretically appear. I suspect that they will, if they're going for the same feel, as I suspect they will, the same feel as the films, they will probably keep him out for the same reason, that he is anachronistic, deliberately anachronistic. He was included by J.R.R. Tolkien not because he was plot important, but because he was world important. He says that he represents something which he thinks is important, but cannot completely define. So can I tell you a bit more about him? I did a whole video on him if you're interested in that. So do go and check out my Tom Bombadil video. What did Tom and Gandalf discuss? Tom Bombadil only exists in the now, in the present, in experiencing good things, not the intentionality of the doing. It's the being, not the doing. Gandalf could not discuss things with him before because he was all about the doing. Finally, he can just exist and enjoy life, and that's why on the way back from all of their travels, he could finally take the time to talk to Tom Bombadil. MT5993, who do you think is the Ghost in Winterfell? The Ghost in Winterfell is a character who appears for about half a page towards the end of the story that we have so far. Theon runs into him. The chapter is called The Ghost in Winterfell. That is referring to Theon because the chapter is named after the POV character. So the Ghost in Winterfell is Theon, but he meets this character who is a hooded man that some people think may well be the Ghost in Winterfell. But the actual Ghost in Winterfell is Theon, and it's just he sees ghosts around him. He sees reminiscences from the past. Bran is seemingly talking to him through the weirwood tree. It is basically him in this world where he is just trying to reconnect and he's not connecting. So the answer is Theon. It's a slightly literary answer, but that is what George R.R. Martin was wanting us to understand. Thomas Small, curious if you've seen the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. I have not. I do love a good board game, assuming that's a board game, but I have not seen that. I'd love to. If anyone knows them and they wish to sponsor me, I will happily show it to you on a live stream. Deep Salsa. That's the first time I've ever done that. But yeah, I will go and have a look at my local game shop and see whether I can see it. Deep Solstice. How about Crowfood's daughter's theory that Bloodstone Emperor was both brother and wife to the Amethyst Empress Dragonseed, hence the Azor Ahai legend? Well, if Crowfood's daughter has that theory, this is Amanda Disputed Lands, then I wouldn't wish to disagree with her. My general take on a lot of these things from the sort of Empire of the Dawn and things like that is that they are meant to be understood, as George R. Martin tells us, as legends, and therefore we shouldn't try and interpret them too literally. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of symbolic truth in that idea, but I wouldn't take it as being a literal truth that we need to draw for the story that we have in A Song of Ice and Fire. Lyle Hammock, since you didn't do your usual fantasy news roundup, what do you think of the anime film about Rohan and Helmhand? Thanks for all your content. I just mentioned it a moment ago, Lyle, but I'm really excited by it. So it is just to briefly expand on that. And I didn't talk about it at the top because it has literally only just been announced and I haven't had a chance to look at too much. But it is not just Warner Brothers, it is New Line Cinema, who were the creative team behind the Lord of the Rings films. As I understand it, Philippa Boyens is attached to it, who was central to the Lord of the Rings films, which is good news. They are currently quite early on in casting for voices and things like that. So I think that in the absence of any more information, I think this is an excellent idea. This is the Rohim, the Riders of the Rohan. This is sort of their origin story, as far as I can tell. That's what they're planning on doing. They were Northmen out sort of off to the north of the map of Middle-earth, but this will be, if what I understand is correct, basically their story of how they moved from lands, sort of the narrow mountain valleys, to the wider plains of Rohan, and forged their long bond of friendship and alliance with Gondor. So that is a great story. You can read about it in the Book of Unfinished Tales if you want to know a bit more about that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Paige Popajoy, hi Robert, we've had a red wedding and a purple wedding. Is it possible we could see a blue wedding, perhaps as a flashback to the Night's King and his corpse bride? Yes, it's possible. We could do, I think, a flashback to the Night's King and the corpse bride, I think, is not likely, but I still play with this idea that we may have Euron and Cersei getting together in the books in similar-ish way to that he got together on the show. And if so, that Euron is starting to become associated with the color blue. He has blue lips and all the rest now, so that could well be a blue wedding if that's what we're looking for. And Euron is echoing a lot of the Night's King feel, and if that may well also start to turn into the Night's King story. So it would be an echo rather than a flashback, would be my best guess. Probably got some more questions. Where am I at? Yep. Question from Cloaked One. Oh, this is Sharam Marashi. If Westeros and Essos are connected in the north, Mos Eisley Forest equals the Haunted Forest, could Benjen end up meeting Dany, i.e. the longest ranging? Oh, that's an excellent idea. I've not thought about that at all. So I think Benjen definitely... So Benjen went out looking for a number of different things. He went out looking to see what happened to Waymar Royce, what's going on with the wildlings, what about all of the others, the rumours that they've been getting. I think that he is going to carry on until he gets an answer to those questions. So I don't think he wouldn't turn around. If he lost his companions, as we know that he did, he would not turn around and go back and say, right, can I have some more companions? And then we're going to head up. He would just carry on his own. So I think he definitely is heading north. I think he has gone to the lands of Always Winter. Could he then sort of move his way around and come back down into Essos? I'd not considered that. I thought that probably he would then start trying to come back. Once he's got whatever information he needs, he would then come back towards the wall, because that's what he's reporting. But maybe he could. I think if he does go that way around to Essos, it's not at the bits that we really know about. It will be at the far side, beyond the Five Forts, which are, as everyone's best guess, is another way of protecting against the others coming in that way. So that would be the route down that he would come, which is a long way away, and it would take a long time for him to rejoin the story. So my guess is no, but I love the thinking, and why not? It's the kind of tinfoil theory I love, is that I can't argue against it, other than the fact that if Benjen does get there, the way he would naturally want to go back is the way he came. Sir Michael the Tall, thank you so much, saying, with the Horn of Winter likely raising the dead Starks to fight the White Walkers, do you think Ned and Robb's bones will be returned to the crypts in time for a return? Will Jon get to see Lyanna? So my take is that it's the statues which are rising rather than the spirits. So the bones are buried and then the spirits are in the statues. That seems to be what we're told when we're with the statues which have the spirits of the dead Starks in them. So it's a matter of which statues have got the bones buried beneath them and which can then come to life. Now, that means that Ned, although he will get a statue, are his bones going to be returned? Probably, although I still think that we will get Barbara Dustin will prevent them from getting it. I think that her dislike of Ned and Ned's bones is genuine. I don't think that's feigned in any way, and I think that she will prevent that from happening. I don't think Robb's bones will be there in time, so we certainly don't know the truth of what or where they are. But the Lyanna thing is interesting because she has got a statue. Now, does this mean that Jon would meet her? Yes. But there is the fact about the swords. The swords are there to keep the spirits in. And we have to then stop and think whose swords have been taken. And the swords that have been taken are the most recent ones. And Hodor took one from an ancient one that was all rusted. So it might be that we are robbed from this idea of actually meeting the more recent Starks simply because of the sword thing. But yeah, it would be an epic moment if Lyanna's statue came to life, as it does in Ned's dreams. A couple of times her statue comes to life. Again, hashtag foreshadowing. Is it? I don't know. But certainly the statues coming to life is foreshadowed a lot. Taco Guy 1988, thank you so much, saying, will Cersei get pregnant in the books? I have a theory it will tie to the Valonqar prophecy. She will give birth to twins. The first will be stillborn. The second, she will die in birth so that the numbers of the kids matches foretold. She might get pregnant again in the books. I think it's entirely possible. I think it's entirely possible that she might get pregnant by Euron. Will she give birth to twins and with the second die in birth? It's possible. I think that she will die with Jaime or at Jaime's hand, though. So that's my personal take. I think the Valonqar prophecy will come true. Maggie the Frog seems to be absolutely on the nail with pretty much all of it. So yes, we are looking for the little brother or little sister, but that fits Jaime as well as children. I don't think we need her to have children for the Valonqar prophecy to work, or need her to have more children. Sharam Marashi, if Westeros, and also I should probably say in terms of the two dying, I think we will see Tom and Myrcella dying in the books as well. I should clarify. So that in terms of those numbers, I think that will work out right. Sharam Marashi, thank you very much, saying if Westeros and Essos, this is a question I think I've answered already. If they're connected in the north, could Benjen end up meeting Dany? So I answered that one already. Thank you. And I might have caught up. Nope, I've got at least one more. No, I always think I might have just caught up on the questions in the chat. I've got one more. Then I'll try and grab some from my patrons. So Lauren Griffith saying, first time live. Hi, Lauren. Welcome. Love your stuff. Do you think Cold Hands could be the man who was sacrificed at the weirwood in Bran's vision in the cave? Could be. I don't think it is. So this is when Bran had his weirwood visions. So he has the weirwood paste, and then he goes back into the weirwood tree, sees through the eyes of the weirwood tree in Winterfell, and he goes back through time, back through time, back through time. And the last thing he sees is a man being sacrificed before the weirwood tree. Now, who is this? We don't know, but the language is, I think, deliberately vague that this is a Bran or a Brandon. So Brandon could feel the blood pumping out from him is how it ends, give or take the exact wording, and it's not 100% clear whether that is Bran, whose POV we're seeing this from, or the character that we're looking at. I think that this almost certainly is a Bran Stark being sacrificed in front of the weirwood tree. Are they cold hands? I suspect not. My best guess for cold hands is that this is one of Bloodraven's supporters, his private guard, who went up to join the Night's Watch with him. 50 of them went up with him, and they stayed with him as his closest followers in the Night's Watch, and almost certainly, if he goes ranging north, he will go with them. What happened to them? They disappeared as well. And perhaps one of them is Cold Hands, who is being kept alive by the... because he's working for Bloodraven, whoever this is, it would appear. Bloodraven himself cannot personally go out and bury that cache of dragonglass. He has to have someone to do that. He cannot personally go out and find Bran Stark and help guide him to where he needs to be. He needs someone to go and do that. Who would he trust? Someone who he has always trusted. So I think it's probably one of those people. The Raven's Teeth, they were known as. Okay, I will dip back into. I think I've caught up on the chat questions. I will come back to the chat in just a moment. Andrew K saying Cold Hand's skin changes a huge elk and communes with ravens. Not sure a random Raven's Teeth member has those abilities, but anything is possible. Yeah, we don't know who it is, but as you say, anything's possible, and that's the best guess I have at the moment, because we haven't heard about any amazing warging skin changer who it could be other than that. Let's go with James F. Parham. I know you think Robert Strong does not have a head, but if he does have a head, whose head is it? Is it Rob's? Felice Stokeworth's? Okay, so I think that Robert Strong does not have a head because all the clues we're given are that he does not have a head. This is the Zombie Mountain in the books. He's the size of the mountain, but he's got this huge helmet on that covers everything except his little eye slit. And inside that, you can only see blackness. He never takes his helmet off. He never speaks. He never eats. He appears not to need any kind of sustenance. So it's not like the mountain that we saw, the zombie mountain we saw on the show. He doesn't take his helmet off ever. It's just completely black in there, and it's kind of welded down, it would appear, onto the rest of his armor. So that appears to be the case, and we have got the mountain's skull appears to have gone down to Dawn. And yes, I know there are some people who theorize that it might not be his skull, but the main argument for that appears to be because surely it must be on the zombie mountain's shoulders, and I think that it isn't. So that's why I think that. Could it be Rob's or Felice Stokeworth? So Felice Stokeworth is a character who unfortunately crosses Bronn, Lord Bronn, and Cersei basically hands her over to Qyburn, and they come up with some idea. Cersei sort of says, "Oh, can we get her back out again and doing a few things for me?" And Qyburn says, "Well, not really. She's not really in a position to be talking much anymore." So he's clearly been doing some sort of experiments or something on her. Could he have taken off her head? Possibly. Could that be on Zombie Mountain's shoulders? I mean, maybe, but I don't think the timing is 100% right there, but maybe. Robb Stark's head, that was chopped from his shoulders so that they could parade his body around with the direwolf head on it. Could he have done that? I think that they would show off about Robb Stark's head rather than just use it as a random head. Because if you're going to have the helmet there hiding the head, what's the point? You would have it as Robb Stark's head. Greasy Strangler saying, my tinfoil theory is that Daario Naharis is actually Euron Greyjoy. What do you think? Yeah, this is a long-standing tinfoil theory. I've not, I'll be honest, seen a particularly convincing argument for it. He does have that same kind of devil may care attitude. He does bear a passing resemblance to him, but I think now we can be reasonably confident, and whereas you could previously maybe just about, if you sort of were quite relaxed about the exact time scales, you could argue that it worked with him being over in the Iron Islands at one point and then back in Marine at another point. But now we know where Euron is, we know where Daario is, and they're in completely different parts of the planet. So I think the short answer is no. It's not. Daario is not actually Euron in disguise, unless Euron has learned how to duplicate himself. Caris Messalina de Valence saying, hello, Robert. I have sometimes thought that the Weirwood network is somewhat akin to fungi, whereby the roots equate to the myceliae and the hyphae. Not a botanist, or biologist, so apologies for probably mispronouncing them. They are the underground vegetative parts of a fungus, and the trees to the fruiting bodies, mushrooms, toadstools. This fits with the idea that all weirwoods are interconnected through their root systems. However, neither theory allows for the planting of weirwoods by humans or the children of the forest, unless the root systems are able to seek out and connect with other weirwoods. This would mean that either the new planting cannot be beyond a certain distance from the root matrix, or that the newly planted weirwoods can exist for a certain period unconnected while seeking the root matrix. Alternately, there may be more interconnected weirwood groups that are separated from each other, though this doesn't fit with the idea of a single connected weirwood network. Maybe weirwoods are connected telepathically rather than physically. I'm interested in your thoughts. Well, I read out the whole thing because I think it's a fascinating idea. I think one thing is very clear, is that yes, if a weirwood is planted, it is not immediately connected to the rest of the weirwood network. Now, in my sort of way of understanding that, it then seeks out the rest of the weirwood network, and the weirwood network seeks it out. And if that cannot happen, then it dies. So that seems to have been what happened at the areas. They planted one, but they couldn't get it to grow. It would just die. Now, that fits with how many plants grow. If you're taking a cutting from somewhere, you can put it in water and it can survive for quite a while, but it's not going to grow and thrive. And eventually it will die, because you have to put it in the soil, because it needs the nutrients and all the rest of it from the soil, as well as just getting water. So that is the way that I understand it, is that yes, a weirwood tree can probably survive for a little while, not being physically connected. But if it's left not physically connected for a while, then it will die. So that's how I see it. And I love this idea of telepathy linking, and this kind of goes with we were talking earlier about the physical wall and the actual magical wall. I wonder whether this is a sort of similar thing, which is that there's a physical connection between the weirwood networks, but there's also a magical connection between the different parts of the weirwood network as well. Mara Lee theory. Hi there, Mara. By the way, I did get your email. I shall reply to it tomorrow. Varys is a merman. Gabriel Farrell also suggests, when Tyrion threatens Varys with throwing him into the sea, Varys responds that he might be surprised at the results. Can you think of any other reason that he might say this, other than the fact that Varys is definitely 100% without doubt a merman? Okay, this is a theory which has been around for a while. It's one I love, and many of us love, because it's so out there. It doesn't really have any huge impact on the plot, and but you can, if you search, if you go to Google and go for Varys Merman, then you'll find that there are people who have pulled out a lot of bits of evidence. None of it is fully convincing in and of itself, but there are lots of things that you could say add up to a reasonable case. Personally, I think not. As a sort of a case in point on this, the quote you're saying that Varys responds that Tyrion might be surprised at the results. This is oft quoted, but I'm afraid it's oft misquoted. I got the actual quote up here. The scene here is not actually on a boat, so Tyrion's not threatening to actually throw him off. This is in A Clash of Kings. Tyrion has come in as sort of acting hand of the king. He is trying to assert his own control, and as part of that, he sent Janos Slynt up to the wall along with one of his lackeys, and he sort of said, well, to the captain, if he happens to have an accident and fall off the side of the ship, then that's okay. There's not a problem at all. And then Varys sort of slinks in and says, oh, well played, well done, and all the rest of it. And Tyrion says, I'm tempted to do the same with you. And Varys then says, you might be disappointed by the result. The storms come and go, the waves crash overhead, the big fish eat the little fish, and I keep on paddling. So, and then the conversation just moves on to other things. This is not Tyrion actually threatening to throw Varys off the side of a boat. It's him saying, I'm just getting rid of some people who are in the way. And Varys is responding in kind with that same analogy about throwing somebody off the side of a boat. And he does not say you might be surprised at what happened. He says you might be disappointed in what happened, as in you might think you can try and kill me, but you won't be able to. You'll just be a bit disappointed. I can just keep on swimming. That's what it is. So unfortunately, sadly, this is misquoted, and a lot of people have read a bit too much into it, is my general take. But there's a lot of interesting stuff there if you want to get into it. I particularly like when Arya is hiding and Varys and Illyrio come up, then she sort of hears water dripping, and then they sort of go off, and there's also water imagery going off. They go into a well and things like this. It's the hints of that, and we don't really see his legs, what's going on. So if you want to leave, evidence is a lot thinner than I suspect many people make out. Sorry. Nenyon saying, just join Patreon to present you my idea about Quaithe. Well, welcome to Patreon. This is one of the benefits of being a patron. I should probably stop and say, patrons, thank you. I always say thank you. I always mean it. If you do wish to support this channel, if you want to get access to some exclusive benefits, the best way to do that is by joining my Patreon. There is a link down in the description if you're at all interested in doing that. I try and frame all of my live streams around questions from my patrons. But Nenyon says, I believe Quaithe is Shira. Oh, so you believe, I believe, Quaithe is Shira Seastar. Could it possibly be that Quaithe is not Shira, but her daughter, possibly even with Bloodraven? With Bloodraven being her father, she would have just as much Targaryen blood as Shira, motivating her to help Dany. It might also explain why Dany has never mentioned the colour of Quaithe's eyes. Yeah, so she doesn't. So this is an argument which is used against the idea that Shira Seastar is Quaithe, because Shira is Targaryen, half Targaryen, and therefore has typical Targaryen looks as far as we know. Dany, when looking at Quaithe, she sees the mask. That's the thing we're told about most, this lacquered mask. And her eyes, we're told, are, and I can't remember the exact words, but watery. She doesn't say violet or blue or purple or anything that we might think of as being slightly Valyrian, but she doesn't mention the color at all, just that they're watery. So does that mean that she isn't because of the eye color thing? Personally, I think that's an argument from silence. We're not told the color of her eyes. Dany doesn't tell us the color of her eyes. So to argue that she can't be a Targaryen because we don't know the color of her eyes doesn't seem particularly strong argument to me. You're suggesting this could be Shira Seastar's daughter. I'm open to that. I don't have a problem. I think that it would work equally well if it's Shira Seastar's daughter with Bloodravens, and that would add a different layer of poignancy to the fact that they're both championing different people. It would certainly still mean, as Quaithe, we know that Quaithe is desperately wanting Dany to be reasserting her Targaryenness, and again, a daughter of Shira Seastar would be Targaryen, so that would again make sense. So yeah, it does all make sense. Rory Bradley. Hi, Robert. Thanks so much for all your hard work on the channel. It was invaluable during the lockdown. You are very welcome. Regarding the weirwoods, a lot of the language used in discussing them by fans is very tech-oriented. Network, hooked up, avatar, etc. Given George R. R. Martin's sci-fi and fantasy background, do you think there is a possibility the weirwood net is a magic technology hybrid? Not something I expect we'll ever get confirmed, but interested in your thoughts. Yeah, so I sort of trailed that we would get this question. Is it possible that the weirwood network is sci-fi in some way? I mean, maybe. George R. R. Martin did write a lot of sci-fi. I don't see any actual hints of it in the books, I have to say. The books, or the language of hooking up to the weirwood network, downloading things, these are fan words which are used to describe what we see, often what we saw on the TV show rather than what we've seen in the books, it has to be said. And I think they reflect our understanding of our own world rather than our understanding of George R. R. Martin's world. We tend not to use the sort of the magical words because they sound a little bit more airy-fairy, and we're trying to sort of explain the meaning of it. So the weirwood network is all connected together. Yes, but we could say it also has a network, things being downloaded. I mean, that's just our way of speaking these days. I don't think we're ever going to get a confirmation on this one way or another. But I haven't seen any evidence in the text that this is a sci-fi story really hidden away. I'm very happy for any ideas. I just have to quickly glancing at the chat for some ideas about the fact that this might be sci-fi, but the only thing that's there is the I can see across the whole story is this, and it's quite a fantasy, we could call it a fantasy trope, I guess, of ancient technology not being understood by people today. People do not understand how Storm's End could be built, or what's going on with the Five Forts, the Valyrian roads. There are loads of different things that we simply do not understand. That could be a hint towards sci-fi, but it could also be a hint towards the fact that George R. R. Martin is taking from the real world the idea of what, it's a very Eurocentric way of seeing the world, but the Dark Ages is what we call to that period of time when after the fall of the Roman Empire, but before the Renaissance and the printing press being developed, when we didn't have much stuff being recorded, when huge amounts of previous knowledge had been lost, it felt dark. It felt like the world was not as technologically advanced as it used to be. that is the kind of feel that we get in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I'm pretty sure, given the fact that George R. R. Martin has talked about Valyria as being a bit like Rome, that does tie into this idea that post the doom of Valyria, post the fall of Rome, yes, we're in this sort of dark ages. A lot of the ancient skills and abilities have been lost. The things to do with Valyrian steel, for example, how to do the Valyrian roads, those things, bits of information have been lost. The Hammer of the Waters. Catherine Furseth says, my tinfoil theory involves the Hammer of the Waters. It's generally assumed that it was created by the children of the forest in a desperate attempt to keep man out. But that doesn't seem logical. All the while, since man was already firmly established in Westeros, and the breaking of the Arm of Dawn wouldn't undo the coming of man. My theory is that the Hammer of the Waters was, on the contrary, done in order to keep someone in Westeros. For example, the others. What do you think? If the speculation that the Hammer of the Waters even severed the Weirwood network, it was a pretty drastic move. So the idea that this was done in order to keep the others in Westeros does make sense. The logic of that is remorselessly true. The long nights went across all of Westeros. However, it also, as far as we can tell, was in Essos. And if, as we suspect, the 5 forts are the equivalent of the wall for Essos, and if the language and examples are different for in Essos, but if the stories that we have from the Age of Heroes and before there are correct, then the others came from that way as well. So simply sundering the 2 continents does not prevent this. What prevents it is dealing with it at source, not just stopping them moving around from one place to another. So I like the logic behind it, but I don't think that it works with the idea that the Long Night was also affecting Essos. Sweet Melissa. Hey, Robert. So I love the idea that under the wall, Winterfell, Molestown, and maybe even beyond are tunnels that all connect and will somehow be used by characters to escape or fight the others. Also, the wormways at the wall were created to house an ancient ice dragon that will somehow be called with the Horn of Winter, which will bring down the wall. Your thoughts? Thanks for all the content. Okay, so the underground of Westeros, not just up at the wall, but right across it, is riddled with cave systems. The more you read, in fact, when I was doing the Traveler's Guide to Westeros, this became abundantly clear to me, where every single time I'd be looking at an area and then there'd be stories about the caves and things underneath it. We read about them in the Rainwood, we read about them in the Westerlands. There's definitely something going on in Dawn. Yes, there's lots up in the north, and then there's legends about going under the wall. The Night's Watch use the wormways to be navigating, so they don't have to go during the winter, go above ground. Lots of things below ground. The half of this story is happening out of sight underneath the ground. I'm pretty sure about that. So yes, on the first part of what you're saying, that will have a bigger role coming forward. That will definitely have a sort of a more than thematic resonance, I suspect. I think that Bran will probably escape in the books through, there's a river running and the cave system. It's not just a cave, it's a cave system. All of this seems to hint that maybe he will escape through the cave system rather than sort of overground, which is what he did on the show. So that may well happen. In terms of other people escaping from the others through caves on the ground, again, it could happen. The wormways being created to house an ancient ice dragon that will be called with the Horn of Winter to bring down the wall. I mean, it's a great idea. I don't think we're going to get another dragon, though. Personally, the raising giants from the earth, I'm pretty sure, is not just raising giants from the earth. There's more to it. It's a twist to it. So this fits with this. Yeah, the ice dragon, that does kind of work, but the Horn of Winter was blown before. There was no mention of an ice dragon. I don't think that works really with the theme of the story that we've got. Yes, George R. R. Martin can expand things out even further if he wants to, and he probably will, but it doesn't seem to match with the theme of ice and fire being these two equal and opposite forces, both of which could destroy the world. Adding in an ice dragon doesn't seem to fit within that kind of dichotomous outline. So, Fuzzy Mormont theory. Ned lost at the Tower of Joy. In fact, it was a trap he was led into by Howland. Beneath the pale blue petals, this is a quote, the thorns lay hidden. I agree with your theory about Howland listening to Bloodraven on the Isle of Faces before continuing to Harrenhal to matchmake Lyanna and Rhaegar, but that suggests Howland's loyalty is more with Bloodraven's project than with Ned, i.e. on the side of the Kingsguard left there by Rhaegar to safeguard the project. So having betrayed Ned, Howland then persuades him to change sides, which saved Ned's life, but possibly broke a promise to his fallen comrades. So what did Ned get out of it? The same as Varys offered him at the Black Cells. He offered Cersei the chance to protect family, in this case his nephew. Okay, so this is quite a densely worked theory, which I like a lot of the thinking in this. I definitely agree that Howland Reed was there on the side of Bloodraven and the Weirwood Network, and he was there to try and save Jon's life. Now, what that means is that he, when he got to the Tower of Joy, what does he want to happen? Well, yes, he wants to protect Jon, but Jon now, under protection of the Kingsguard, probably is not the best way for him to be protected. By the time they've reached that point, I think it should be apparent to anyone who takes a step back, if they know the whole situation, that all Targaryens are going to be hunted down and killed, particularly the daughter of Rhaegar and the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna would be hunted down and killed by all the might of Robert Baratheon's army. The only way out of this was to hide the baby. And who could hide the baby? Not the Kingsguard. Ned is the best person to do that. So that is where I think we are at. I don't think that there's a betrayal here. I think that actually Howland was probably, the Weirwood Network, probably very happy for everyone except Ned and Arthur to die and then to stop the action, because Arthur would probably have killed Ned. No, well, he would have killed Ned. We know this. Ned has said this, that he would have been killed but for Howland. The others, as much as Ned might trust them, they had to go. They weren't central to this plan. The plan would only work if a very, very, very small number of people knew the truth. So I think Howland's role there was actually to take a step back, let the fighting go on, and then stop it once it reached the point just before Ned was going to die, because Ned had to survive in order for this to all go ahead. So I don't think he was betraying anyone. The pale blue petals and the thorns, this is part of a dream that Ned has, I think, while he's in the Black Cells. It's a memory of below his love for Lyanna, there was pain, is just the symbolism that we're trying to get there. Okay, so I hope I've sort of worked my way through that one for you. I don't think Howland is then persuading Ned into the righteousness of the cause of the prince that was promised. I don't think that's what happened there. I think that Howland merely was working to make sure that Ned survived, that John survived, and he knew that the way to do that was through family with Ned, not through this wonderful prophecy that will have worked for Rhaegar and I'm assuming as well Arthur Dayne. Reflective Rambling for Lady Pushkins. Thank you, Reflective Rambling. Could Ashara, having jumped into the sea, become a water wight and then become Quaithe, explaining the watery eyes? Wow. Could have. Yes. Did she? I'm pretty sure no. That's a great answer. It means she jumped from a very high tower, so the story goes, so she wouldn't have survived. Could she have then become a water wight? There has to be some sacrifice and some intentionality, so somebody somewhere would have wanted her to become a water wight, not without knowing that wasn't even a thing. And then for her to become Quaithe, why would she be wanting Dany, who was not any part of this Rhaegar thing that was going on, that she was supportive of, want her to be being more Targaryen? I'm afraid it doesn't add. I love it. I love the idea if that's what's with the watery eyes, but no, I don't think so. Thank you, though, Lady Pushkins. That was a good tinfoil. Stephen Dillon. I have a theory about Sansa and Ned Dayne meeting up. Ned Dayne is in the Riverlands, Vale North area. He's a squire without a master. There's a tourney nearby, and we know he knows what Sansa Stark looks like. He's still kind of young. He doesn't have anyone with him because he left the Brotherhood, so he may be looking for someone for help, and a tourney like the Wind Knights tourney would be the perfect place to get aid or find someone to squire under. Also, Sansa's journey parallels Eddard in many ways. Brother and father murdered unjustly by the crown, learning in the Vale, friendship with a Baratheon, and so on. It would be fitting to see Sansa have a Dane ally as well. So on that last bit, yeah, I hadn't really picked up on those parallels, but they are very good. I do like that. But I think the thing is that Ned, yes, he's young, but I think he'll also be very aware that he's the Lord of Starfall, and the person he was squire to is now dead, and the cause that they were supporting appears to have been taken over by someone else with a very different vision. Where should he? Where would his honor want him to go? Back home. So I think personally, Ned is going to head back towards Starfall. That when we had this idea of the 5-year break that George R. Martin at one point intended to have in the books, that would be a point at which we could have a 5-year break, and then he could emerge with the great sword Dawn. As it is, he won't, because he's too young, and Darkstar is almost certainly going to take over that role. But his story line that we had, that George R. R. Martin created for him, the logic still has him heading back down south to Starfall. The tourney, you say it's nearby. It's actually quite a way. This is basically it's at the foot of the Giant's Lance, that massive mountain that the Erie's on top of. In order to get there, you have to go through the Mountains of the Moon. We know that is an incredibly dangerous route at the moment, and it's being guarded because there's wars going on, and the Erie and the Vale have been cut off from everywhere else. So it's not just somewhere that people can randomly come to from across the Seven Kingdoms. This is very much a Vale thing. Others might be able to get in there, but it's quite a hard route, and so if Ned is looking for the easiest place to go, he's not going to be going to the Erie. R plus, this is Young Bath Bag. R plus L equals J and D. Question mark. It would make sense to send the Stark-looking one north and the Valyrian-looking one to Starfall. May explain the lemon tree. George loves twincest. Okay, so is it possible that Rhaegar and Lyanna had two children, Jon and Daenerys? Well, I think the case for Jon is pretty clear. The case for Daenerys being born at the Tower of Joy, I don't think is at all clear at all. We know that she was born on Dragonstone. That's how she got her name, Daenerys Stormborn. That was witnessed not just by Viserys, but also by the other people that were there. We know the people set out from Dragonstone. They ended up at Braavos. The lemon tree, it's absolutely, I did a video on this if you want the evidence, but it's absolutely, it makes sense that there is a house with a lemon tree outside the window in Braavos. Yes, we get the line that trees don't grow in Braavos, but people put a full stop there. There is no full stop there. The rest of the sentence says, except for the courts and gardens of the rich and mighty. And that's exactly where Dany was, in the courts and gardens of the rich and mighty. So the fact that that there was a house with a red door and a lemon tree outside the window is not even slightly a mystery. It's been built up far more than it should have been. We know that's not a problem. So her being in Braavos makes perfect sense. George R. R. Martin, though, does love twincest. That bit I will not deny, but I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that Dany was born or Dany's early life was anything other than she thinks it was. David Waters, thank you very much, saying, could any of Ned's Tower of Joy companions have survived to accompany Howland and Ashara to Greywater Watch? Could William Dustin accompany Ned's bones north? I mean, that would be a great twist, but no. When we look at what happened in the Tower of Joy, we are quite often thinking about this line that George R. R. Martin said, is that Ned had this fever dream about the Tower of Joy, and we shouldn't take it literally what was in that fever dream. And that's absolutely right. I'm not going to dispute that in the slightest. If anyone wants me to get into how we should interpret what that dream was, then I'm very happy to do that. But the crucial point here is the fact that the death of Ned's companions was not in the fever dream. It was a completely separate thing. Ned was awake, fully lucid, when he's thinking about who died at the Tower of Joy. That and other details like tearing down the Tower of Joy brick by brick, that is also something he actually remembers. It's not a fever dream thing. So could William Dustin have accompanied them north? No, I don't personally buy that at all. I like the idea that maybe he will magically appear and to say to Barbary Dustin, "Aha, I'm here." I thought that I know that I hid away for all this time, but actually Ned Stark's a good guy and he didn't prevent you from getting my bones. But no, that's not the case. Young Bathbag saying, also thanks for doing this. I'm so wrapped in Valyrian steel tinfoil you could bake me like a potato. Wow. Visual images. Thank you very much. Question from where are we? I think I've got another question in the chat. If only I could find it. Yep. Okay. Here we go. Marvelli OG saying, "Hi Robert. I've always had an issue with the Tyrion Targaryen. If Joanna was with Aerys, why not drink moon tea and claim to not have got pregnant? It's I understand the thinking. She could have done. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe she wanted to have a child. Maybe she had strong views that she didn't wish to be killing an unborn child within her. We don't know. We don't know huge amounts about Joanna Lannister. Now, also, they couldn't know for sure. It's not, if Aerys did force himself upon her. I think the clear implication is that this was at a time when Tywin was somewhere around as well, and so Tywin presumably was also sleeping with her, so they probably didn't know whose child it was, and Tywin wasn't wanting to kill another potential heir. So I can see ways around it. I don't think this is conclusive evidence. I am keeping an eye on my re-listen through. I am keeping a very strong ear out for any evidence one way or the other on this. So I will say, so far, the first 2 or 3 chapters that we have of Tyrion, there was a lot more dragony symbolism and emphasis than I remembered. It's very, very strong. It's gone a lot quieter since then, but it definitely was there to begin with. In any state of affairs, then I think that we can clearly say that George R. R. Martin has not made this a straightforward thing, and he probably won't tell us. It'll just be left to us to figure out or decide one way or another. I don't think he's going to give us a clue, one that is so incontrovertible that we won't be able to work our way around it. Stacey Burke, I have 2 theories on who Septa Lemore might be. Firstly, she's Illyrio's wife Sarah and Fagon's actual mother, or secondly, she's the wet nurse who fled Dragonstone with Dany and Viserys when they were children. Okay, well, Septa Lemore is, for those book-only characters, she's the Septa who is training Fagon, and Tyrion runs into her. She's been around for a while. Now, could she be Sarah, Illyrio's wife, Fagon's mother? We think... I don't think so. Illyrio has a story that would be very hard to fake, that she died of the grayscale, effectively, the Grey Plague, and that would be very hard to fake. He apparently keeps her stone hands. People will have seen her getting it and getting sick. He has a picture of her. He talks about her to Tyrion. Tyrion doesn't kind of suspect anything. He's clever enough to notice these kinds of things. He shows a picture that's in a locket. So there's no hint that he's lying about that at all. So I don't think it's Fagon's actual mother. In terms of the other possibility we put down was the wet nurse who fled Dragonstone with Dany and Viserys. So yes, there was a wet nurse who fled Dragonstone with Dany and Viserys. We have no idea where she is. But the one clue that we do have is that John Connington refers to her as Lady Lemore, which is not what he would say to a wet nurse, who would have had to have got well trained in the faith of the Seven and many other things, which doesn't seem likely. This appears to be someone who was actually a proper Septa. They do appear to have lots of knowledge, the kind of knowledge that you could actually teach somebody about it. If it is somebody, and I did do a video about Septa Lemore if you're interested, and I think I concluded that it's probably just a random somebody that we don't know. Yes, they're somebody from the Seven Kingdoms, but they're not important, not a major character. It's possible that this could be Tyrion Sands' mother. It's a bit of a long shot, but we do know that Tyrion Sands' mother was a Septa. The age seems about right, and the Dornish, the Martells, always linking in with the Targaryens. So it's possible. I don't think we've got enough. The hair color thing seems to not particularly work on that one, so I don't think we've got enough evidence one way or another, but it's possible. Yeah, she remains a mystery is the short answer, and it's one that George R. Martin has simply not given us the information on. So I think we need to be honest enough with ourselves to admit the fact that we do not have all of the information we need on that one. Eric Fogg saying, one of the more disturbing bits of tinfoil I've heard is that Cersei will have Qyburn reanimate Tommen, who, as the little brother, fulfills the prophecy by strangling Cersei. So obviously Tommen is still alive in the books. On the show, after he died, then Cersei said, Qyburn basically said, what do you want done? And Cersei said, burn the body, scatter the ashes over the great sept. That seems the most likely. The idea that she would hand over his body to Qyburn to do experiments on seems really unlikely, which means that Qyburn would have to take Tommen's body without Cersei knowing. That seems like an incredibly high-risk thing for him to be doing, given the fact that at the moment he seems to have an unlimited supply of bodies to be practicing on anyway. The only reason why he might do it is a king's blood reason, but he's not about the magic, he's about the science. So I don't think so. I mean, yes, it would fit the Valonqar little brother theory, but I don't think so because of the logistics of how does Qyburn get the body. Diego Godoy saying, hola, Robert, hola. I'm rereading A Game of Thrones, and the way the Northern Army behaves at the Battle of the Green Fork is very suspicious, to say the least. They don't use the high ground to their advantage, give the Lannister army a heads up that they are coming, etc. Do you think Roose Bolton was already planning to betray Robb at that point? It's a really interesting question. So the Battle of the Green Fork is the battle on the TV show. We nearly saw it. It was the one when Tyrion comes back and he's got his mountain clans with him, and then they get sent to fight in a battle with the Lannister army against the army of the North. Now, they win that. The Lannisters win that. However, Robb Stark has pulled a fast one, and this is an army being led by Roose Bolton, but he's taken his cavalry off, and they go off and attack Jaime Lannister and capture Jaime Lannister. So it is a victory, but they have been tactically outthought by Robb Stark and the North. Now, is Roose Bolton's loss because he's already planning on betraying Robb? Now, this is one of I had this last week and I've got it again this week. It's very rare, but this is one of those questions that George R. R. Martin did actually answer pretty fully. Obviously, a long time ago, he doesn't answer questions like this fully anymore, but he was asked this very question, and this is what he said. Lord Bolton may well have had all sorts of things in mind. Whether or not he would act on any of those thoughts is another matter. Roose is the sort of fellow who keeps his thoughts to himself, and the best sword is the one that cuts both ways, he might tell you. Take the Battle of Green Fork. Had his night march taken Lord Tywin unawares and won the battle, he would have smashed the Lannisters and become hero of the hour. Well, if it failed, well, you see what happened. The only way he could lose there would be if he were captured or slain himself, and he did his best to minimize the chances of that. So what George R. R. Martin is saying is that maybe Roose Bolton had some thoughts that he might betray Robb Stark at that point, but that did not really impact on his battle plan. His battle plan was that it didn't matter whether he won or lost. Either way, he was going to win. Because if he won the battle, he's a hero for the North. He wins. If he loses the battle, then that's okay, because the whole point was that was just a big blindsiding maneuver so that Robb Stark could go off and get Jaime Lannister captured. So as long as Roose wasn't killed or captured himself, he was all right. He didn't mind. He was just thinking about himself. So that's pretty. I think that's a pretty clear and well-rounded answer from George R. R. Martin. I love it when not just me theorizing on something, but this is something George R. R. Martin has said. Eric Ferg saying another terrifying bit of tinfoil is that Ned, Howland, and perhaps Arthur, before his death, killed all or most of the staff and the maesters at the Tower of Joy to keep Jon a secret. Yeah, so I've touched on this a couple of times. The Tower of Joy was not just 3 members of the Kingsguard and Lyanna. The Rhaegar would have, at the very, very least, made sure that there was a maester or a midwife or someone there to deliver the baby, his child. There was no way he would have not done that. So, and that person would surely, as Lyanna was still ill after the birth of the child, they would still be there, and yet we hear nothing about it. So what happened to them? We know that Ned went to ridiculous lengths to ensure that nobody ever even found out where the Tower of Joy was, and he pulled down the entire tower. He buried the bodies on the ridge there and then never told anyone where they were. This is where the Barbary Dustin things comes in, is that she wasn't annoyed that Ned didn't bring the bones back with him. I think she could probably have understood if he hadn't done that, if he then said, but if you want to go and get them, there at this place, here's some directions. He clearly never did that. He clearly never told them where they were, and that is the thing. It would have felt deliberately obstructive, deliberately not telling her where her husband's bones were. So Ned went out of his way to get rid of any possible evidence, and there is at least a maester, probably servants and other people there as well. What about them? Well, there are 2 obvious options, and I think that we're left to decide for ourselves which way this goes. One option is, yes, they were killed to make sure that the news never got out. The other option is that the family who were clearly most closely involved in this were the Dayne family, and they were probably the people provisioning it. Because let's not forget that this was a place for months that they were living in. They needed food and provisions. This was in the middle of the mountains. They didn't have a little farm to be providing themselves with stuff. They needed provisions from somewhere. That will have come from House Dayne. So the other option is that the maester and whoever else were taken back to House Dayne and dealt with there in whatever way. So might Ned and Howland and whoever else have killed them? It's darkly possible. But there is another option, that they just got taken down to the to Starfall. Aaron Bergman says, what if the true protagonist of A Song of Ice and Fire is the Weirwood tree? What if the Weirwoods were tied together through their roots to form one life form like the Pando tree of Colorado? George R. R. Martin might be giving his take on Tolkien's fantasy. he did give us a dwarf who turned out to be a little person. And what if George R. R. Martin is addressing the Ents that went to war, the weirwoods fight against the human race? Could Westeros be post-apocalyptic Earth where the forgotten depths of Winterfell had once been a fallout shelter? So might the weirwoods be able to warg into Greenseers? The Night of the Laughing Tree, being the weirwood, warged into Howland Reed. Is this all about the weirwood network? Now, so there is no doubt in my mind that one of the bits of inspiration for the weirwood network is the Tolkien's forests of Fangorn and the Old Forest. Now, it's made clear there that the forest used to extend out across Middle Earth. Fangorn, which is where Treebeard was, and we get the Ents in, and the Old Forest, which was right by the borders of the Shire. It was in the books, not the TV show, but basically it was ruled by Old Man Willow, this very malevolent tree that managed to sort of ruled the entire forest and moved it and shifted it and things like that. And like Fangorn with the Ents, obviously the trees could move and shift around, and they were taking their vengeance on those who would do them harm. So is this what's going on here? As I say, I think George R. R. Martin definitely took inspiration from it. I think that there's also, I've not really gone down this route before, but the idea that the Shade of the Evening trees are like a severed from the main weirwood network, corrupted type of weirwood does also work with the Old Forest and Fangorn, in terms of the Old Forest is the trees gone bad, and they were once connected up, and then that connection got severed and they've gone bad. Is kind of like the prevailing theory on the Shade of the Evening, or prevailing in my world anyway, on the Shade of the Evening trees being once part of the weirwood network and then that being severed. So is this actually about the weirwood network? Well, in a way, yes, you could argue that it is. If this is going to be a story that George R. R. Martin told us, he started out thinking about Bran as the main character, the main protagonist in this. And if he quickly got from that to him being the tree wizard, and the weirwood network do take over in some way, then yes, you could say that that is what's been going on. And you could certainly argue that the show ending was, and this was the Children of the Forest and the weirwood network planning the whole thing, and they got what they wanted. You could certainly see it in that kind of sinister way. I don't think that's what George R. R. Martin is trying to do with this. I don't think that's where he's going to end up, but it's definitely possible. Just trying to see how many more questions. I've still got a few more questions to go. Sylvester Snow saying, "Hello, Robert. I hope you and Dan are having a nice Thursday evening. I was watching a Disputed Lands video about Azor Ahai's identity recently and was intrigued by her theory of Azor Ahai being 3 people instead of 1, explaining Maester Aemon's statement that the Sphinx is the riddle, one being made up of different parts, and also explaining why the dragon must have 3 heads. What do you think of this theory? And if Jon and Dany are 2 of the 3 heads, who is the best bet on being the 3rd? My guess would be Tyrion." Okay, so a couple of things there. I haven't seen that video by Amanda, but I'm sure it is excellent. The idea that Azor Ahai might be 3 people, or actually, I'll do the dragon has 3 heads thing first. This is something we get from Aemon and also from Rhaegar, and seems to be sort of building on this idea of the original Targaryen invaders, Aegon and his sisters, that there are 3 of them, and therefore there must be 3 if they're going to be echoing that in some way. Not that there doesn't appear to be the idea there inherent in that that the prince that was promised Azor Ahai is going to be 3 people. But and I'll bring all of this back together in a moment. The Sphinx bit, when we're saying the Sphinx is the riddle, I think that we should just take that at face value and say, actually, you shouldn't be thinking about the Sphinx being this character called Aurelius or Aleris. Actually, that is probably Sorella, who is one of the Sand Snakes and is in disguise and isn't who they are claiming to be. Now, that then makes them the riddle rather than whatever it is, the information that they're giving out. So that, I think, is the plaintext reading of what's going on there. In terms of the dragon has 3 heads, this is something George R. Martin is playing with as an idea. He's giving us different thoughts and options. He's not going to give us at the end of this, and here the dragon has 3 heads. Here are the 3 heads of the dragon, A, B, and C. That's not what he's saying. He's given us 3 dragons. He will give us, I suspect, 3 dragon riders. Dany is one already. I suspect that Jon will ride a dragon. Personally, I think that Euron will ride a dragon. Does that make them the 3 heads of the dragon? Well, perhaps not. Are there 3 characters who are all Targaryens? Well, we've got Dany, we've got Jon, who almost certainly will be about to be revealed as one, and then we've got another person who claims to be one, being Aegon. Are those 3? You could perhaps interpret it that way. Maybe it's all 3 dragons. Is that what it means by the dragon has 3 heads? Because the Targaryen symbol is a dragon with 3 heads. Could it mean that? Again, that's possible. Could it mean Jon, as you suggest, Jon, Dany, and Tyrion? We've already noted their links that were deliberate by George R. R. Martin, their mother dying associated with their childbirth, not knowing their father, and all of these kind of things layer up that make you see that their stories do sort of echo in different ways. Tyrion is very keen in the early chapters of book 1 to be reiterating how similar he and Jon are in many ways. So could they be the 3 heads of the dragon? We're not going to get the definitive answer. We're going to be able to look back on this and go, well, you could interpret that in lots of different ways. That is how George R. R. Martin is writing the story, rather than us looking to unpick what does this exact bit of prophecy mean. He cares more about how people react to it. He cares about the fact that Rhaegar believed that the dragon has 3 heads means that he had to have another child. That was an important plot point. Without that, we wouldn't have had the Tower of Joy and Jon and all the rest of it. We would not have had that because Rhaegar believed in it. Slickwill 91. Human sacrifice in Winterfell used to keep winter and others away. Sacrifices in Highgarden used to bring in spring and fertility. Craster is dead and the oaken seat long cut down. Winter is coming. I mean, that's a great theory. Human sacrifice in winter used to keep winter and the others away. I think that human sacrifice in Winterfell has not happened like that for a very long time. But what you do see is that Ned still keeps up the practice of, when he beheads someone, he cleans his sword. He cleans the blood off of the sword in the pool before the weirwood tree. So he is still feeding blood to the weirwood tree. So I don't think you can say that the sacrifices before the weirwood tree in Winterfell have ended recently, because either they didn't end at all because it was still getting blood, or it ended a long time ago because the human sacrifices seem to have ended there a long time ago. But I like the theory. And Jewel Elson, thank you so much for the Vect super sticker. Thank you very much. Emanon Fox just asking why Catelyn brought Maester Lewin to Winterfell when they already had Maester Wallace. We don't know what happened with Maester Wallace. He was definitely the Rickard's Maester, but he went with Catelyn north because she trusted him, and she still had a very newborn child, and so for the journey it made perfect sense. The implication is that Wallace died at some point, and so Maester Lewin just stayed there at Winterfell. Eric Fogg saying, I find it really interesting that everyone feels very certain about the writer of the pink letter and dismisses alternative theories as tinfoil when there are mixed signals and problems for all the theories. For instance, Linda and Elio have a 43-minute video that essentially says, duh, it's obviously Ramsay. While I suspect Ramsay, I find the logic in your pink letter, my pink letter theory, pretty compelling in that your combination of Mance and Mel makes Jon's resulting death more tragic for Mel, who was trying to save Jon. Thank you. I think that firstly, I would say I hope that I never fall into that trap of thinking that other theories for things like the pink letter are necessarily tinfoil. For me, a tinfoil theory is one that doesn't really have evidence for it, but you just kind of like. You could make a case for lots of people writing the pink letter. Personally, I think that it is pretty clear that Ramsay didn't write it. I saw a little bit of that video you're talking about. I mean, far be it from me to question Elio and Linda's understanding of the world of Ice and Fire, but I think in terms of what we have to look at in terms of the pink letter is what was it intended to do, because it has a very clear intention, which is to goad Jon into attacking Winterfell. Who wants Jon to attack Winterfell? Well, might Ramsay? I mean, he has no reason to in particular. He's not got a particular history with Jon. There's no particular reason why he's up against him. If everything he says in that letter is true, then he's already secured Winterfell. So why on earth is he trying to goad somebody else to come in and attack Winterfell? That doesn't really make sense, particularly when he's very clear that Jon does not have a rightful claim there. Who does want Jon to be going to Winterfell is Stannis, or more precisely Melisandre, who can see that Stannis needs some extra support going on. So it makes sense that it's her who's wanting that. She is duplicitous, and it makes sense that Mance may well have sent it because of the language usage. The language usage is quite clear. It seems to be written by a person who from north of the wall, by the way that they refer to the Night's Watch, but more importantly, it is all about Mance. This letter is not, yes, it's trying to goad Jon in, but half of it is about things to do with Mance. What does Ramsay care about Mance Raider, particularly given the fact that he claims he's captured him already? It comes across as quite an egocentric letter from Mance with the intention of goading Jon. That's how it appears, and we have to look about who wants to goad Jon into attacking Winterfell. So, question from Matthew Hawkins. My tinfoil theory is that Bronze Jon Royce will once again meet his son Waymar Royce once the wall comes down and the army of the dead march south towards the Isle of Faces. Yeah, I think this is one of those things that we will definitely, when the army of the dead comes south, we will, I'm sure George R. R. Martin will show us some people who are dead in it, but because I don't think he'll be able to resist that. Might Jon Royce see his son Waymar Royce there? Yeah, possibly. Jon Royce is he's not at the wall at the moment, so we're and he's still a long way away from that. So we're slightly ahead of ourselves, but it's entirely possible that may happen. If it doesn't happen with him, it will happen with somebody else. Lots of people that we know have died or will die from the Army of the Dead. Mara Lee, Ned walked into one of the birds and flew away at his execution. I think I answered that one a bit earlier for you, Mara. Actually, just coming across it again. C. Gashiola, my tinfoil theory is that when Euron Greyjoy invades Old Town, Melora Hightower is going to side with him and kill her father, or allow Euron to kill him. But it's a ruse. I think she will pretend to be on Euron's side, and her occult knowledge will be valuable to him. But I think she and her father literally saw this coming from miles away, because they probably have glass candles. I think they will have planned for it. Oh, pardon me. And Lord Leighton will have willingly sacrificed himself so his daughter can stop Euron. The late escapist has got another one linking in with this, saying Euron will be crowned king of Westeros in Old Town by the Hightowers, and Melora Hightower is the woman with the hands of white fire, not Cersei. I believe Cersei's alliance with Euron was another shortcut taken by the showrunners to avoid introducing more characters. Melora is strongly implied to be a practicing magician, making her an ideal match for Euron. Also, I think Euron will learn things at the Hightower that will change his goals and possibly drive him north of the Wall, maybe to kill Bloodraven and take command of the White Walkers to lead them south. Okay, so a lot of different thoughts about there, but Melora Hightower, Lord Leighton Hightower's daughter, is up at the top of the Hightower with him. Neither of them have been seen for a very, very, very long time. Rumored to be magic users, probably are. How will they respond to Euron? Well, they're already sending out, trying to defend themselves. That the Leighton Hightower sent out his sons to go off and do various things. There will be some magical defenses as well. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt. I do wonder whether the tower itself may survive, although we do have a wonderful bit from Fire and Blood where you get a dragon landing on the High Tower. If Euron has a dragon and he can land on the High Tower, that would be epic, and would perhaps be a way for the High Towers to be defeated by him. Could she be the woman we see in Aaron's vision? Possibly. I still think Cersei is the most likely, but I certainly buy the idea that her being a magic user would work. I think that Cersei will link up with Euron later on, though, so it could be either. In terms of this idea that she might pretend to be on Euron's side, and then Leighton Hightower will willingly sacrifice himself so that she can then destroy Euron. I mean, it's possible. I don't think we've got much evidence anyway. We don't know these characters. We've not met them. We don't know what drives them. So I think anything is possible. The only thing we know is that they clearly are wanting to defend Old Town. That's all we're aware of, and they do seem to know what is going on around and about. Euron then going north of the Wall, that's a very long way away. I think that the thing we can probably conclude reasonably clearly is that he's not going to go there flying on the back of a dragon and then just literally be the same as the Night King was on the show. I don't think that's how it's going to work. I think that he will be happy, rather, that the others are invading. I think he'll be happy with Dany's invasion. He is wanting the whole world to be destroyed and then to be God of the Ashes. That's what his plan is. he doesn't have to destroy the whole world if other people are going to do it. He just needs to work out how to destroy the others at the end of it all, so that he can then rule over everything. That's where he's at. I don't think he cares. I don't think he needs to be at the head of the others. I think he just is happy for the others to wreak whatever damage they're doing. Sparkle Burner, thank you so much for saying, what's your favorite ice cream? I don't know if I have one. Probably either sort of like a clotted cream fudge or something along those lines would work well for me. If you've ever been to the southwest of England, then you'll know the kind of thing I'm talking about. Knights who say sledge, but thank you for the super chat. Knights who say sledge, howdy Robert and Dan from the Pacific Northwest. I hope all is well on your end. It is, thank you. My question is sort of tinfoil related, since it's about things we cannot know for sure quite yet. If Dany doesn't get pregnant at some point in the story yet to come, why would George R. R. Martin spend so much time having Dany focus on her supposed infertility? I realise Miri Maz-Dur didn't curse Dany. It was more of a prediction or assessment. It's not so much that Miri Maz-Dur says what she says about the impossible circumstances surrounding any future pregnancy that draws the focus. It's Dany ruminating on it so many times afterwards. Why does George R. R. Martin do that, repeating it again and again, if it isn't for a good reason? Is this going to be John? The question is this going to be Jon's baby? It's entirely possible that she may well become pregnant. In answer to your question about Miri Maz-Dur and Dany thinking about having children and all the rest of it, I think we need to not lose sight of quite how important this Mother of Dragons thing is. This is huge. It's the name she gives to herself, and this is, after book one, is a lot about the identity of Dany's child or children. We get these prophecies about the stallion who mounts the earth, the world, and Dany eats this horse heart to prove that she's that the child, the omens are good, and the child will not be born deformed. The irony, of course, is that the child inside her at the time will indeed be born deformed. Now, what all this is leading to is the fact that she might have been thinking that it's about giving birth to a child, but actually she becomes the mother of dragons. And that is the storyline that goes forward, is that she may not have children, but she has the dragons, and the dragons are her children. And so, in a way, the stallion that mounts the world is Drogon, because that is her child that she's going to have. And that is who she's going to be bringing back up to the Dosh Kalin in the Winds of Winter. So this all kind of cycles around. So that whether she actually gets pregnant again is almost secondary to the thematic thing that's happening here, which is the fact that she did become a mother of dragons. And in the same, and it's a sort of reverse of what happened at the tragedy at Summerhall, which is that Aegon V was trying to give birth to dragon eggs. He was trying to create dragons, and instead he got a human. Rhaegar was born. Thematically a dragon, but a human. Dany, at that whole area there, was trying to have a human child, but actually what she ended up is hatching 3 dragons. So it's kind of like the opposite of what happened at Summerhall, which I'm sure was deliberate on George R. R. Martin's part, but it's not ever really spelt out that link, but it's definitely there. So that's a slightly long-winded way of coming around to say, thematically, the more important point is Dany's the mother of the dragons. She may well get pregnant herself, but that's not the main. That's not going to be as important. It might simply add some poignancy to her death later. Question from Glodelio. I listen to Did Oberyn Poison Tywin every day at work. Wow. If that's my video, well, thank you, first of all. If that's my video, I'm sure that does my view ratio no manner of good, but all manner of good. But thank you so much. Yeah, Oberyn almost certainly did poison Tywin, in my personal view. I don't think that's tinfoil. I think that is very, very strongly backed up by the text. Do check out the video if you are interested. Lawnduck20. Hello, Robert. Is Aegon a Blackfire? Yes, you've come up with a few quick fire ones here for me, so I shall answer them in quick fire. Is Aegon a Blackfire? Yes, I think he is. Was Davos reborn amidst salt and smoke during the Battle of Blackwater? So is he Azor Ahai. He was thematically reborn, and therefore, yes, he can take some thematic Azor Ahai-ishness with him, but that does not mean he is Azor Ahai. I think that looking for Azor Ahai is not the point here. We will still be arguing who Azor Ahai is at the end of all of this. Lastly, do you think Bloodraven ever skin changes into Sir Pounce? Love the idea. Why not? I've not looked at that as a theory, but I do like the idea that maybe that is a way that he keeps an eye on what's going on in the Red Keep. Reflective Rambling said, in partial seriousness, more for fun, or to go on the record as holding this foolery in my headcanon. Feel not to address if the stream goes on. Well, I shall address it anyway, Reflective Rambling. Thank you. Two-part tinfoil. The twist to the Scargosi unicorns is that they are actually aquatic. Given it's an island nation, they could function more like a hippocampus. Thus, they could still be ridden to battle. In our history, and Westerosi traders pass narwhal tusks as unicorn horns. They will be influential in the battle against Euron and the Kraken, or against Cersei. Which leads us to part 2. Shireen says, I should like a gown of silver seaweed. With her connection to Patchface's riddles, she will be sacrificed, but not for a power of the north, but to battle Euron on his oncoming Kraken. She will be reborn as merfolk, and given the unicorn connection to maidens, will somehow be involved with the unicorn army. Well, this is excellent headcanon tinfoilery. As for Shireen, I mean, I think she's going to be burned. I think she's going to be burned by Melisandre, so I don't think there's anything much left of her that can be reborn as anything. I'm afraid George R. Martin has effectively confirmed that. Now, in terms of the unicorns, I'm still a fully subscribed member of the Horny Goat Appreciation Society, the Horny Goats of Skagos. We have now seen one. John has a sort of a dream via Ghost, who is linked up with Shaggy Dog, of a goat with one horn, which almost certainly is where the unicorns on Skagos myths comes from. So I'm fully subscribed to that. But the idea that they might be narwhals or something like that, I think is a wonderful idea. It's the kind of tinfoil I like. It would work really well. I don't think that the Krakens will come that far north, but if they did, that would be absolutely fantastic. Gigglefits saying, hi Robert, my tinfoil theory is that Azor Ahai is a red herring. I think the Sword of the Morning, being given a title by merit rather than birth, is handed down in preparation for the next long night. So this is I like this. I don't know if this is really tinfoil, I think, is a really interesting idea. So the sword of the morning being handed down by merit rather than by right is great as a sort of a counterpoint to what this Azor Ahai, prince that was promised kind of thing is, because they don't have to prove anything, they just are that. Now, George R. R. Martin, I think with the Azor Ahai thing, as I said earlier, I think he is going to leave it open to our interpretation who Azor Ahai is, and I think the Sword Dawn will play a role. I think that it's a sword, the only sword we know of that has any chance of being the original Lightbringer, and I think it will play that role in the second Long Night. And does this mean that Azor Ahai, or the prince that was promised, has to be proven worthy? Ish. I think that they will be shown to be Azor Ahai by the actions that they take, rather than they are Azor Ahai, therefore they have to take those actions, if that kind of line of causality makes sense. George R. R. Martin is not one for having a clear prophecy that we're just trying to work our way towards an understanding exactly how that's going to apply. It's going to be a lot vaguer there. Mara Lee, Tinfoil Theory, Rhaegar was not killed. One of his men was glamoured to look like him with the rubies on the breastplate, and Rhaegar is actually hiding out in Braavos as a faceless man. I've done a video on this one. Mara, thank you very much for the tinfoil. I'm very much of the opinion that Rhaegar is dead. I don't think that he was glamoured. I think that everything we know about him shows that he thought he was going to survive that battle, win that battle, come back and sort out the kingdom and get everything right. That's the implication of what he said to Jaime. There's no hint that he was scared in any way. So I think he definitely went there. Even if it had been glamoured, after he'd been killed, all the rubies were smashed off of it, and then the body was burned afterwards. Somebody would have gone, hang on a moment, that's not Rhaegar. So I think it's beyond any doubt that Rhaegar is definitely dead. I don't know where I've heard this as well. Pardon me, this idea that Rhaegar may now be a faceless man. I don't know where this has come from, and I don't see any evidence for it myself. Bonds. Hi, Robert. A couple of theories. Theory number one, Rickon was the real person Jojen and Meera were sent to meet. When they would have left Greywater to watch, Shaggy Dog would have been chained in the Godswood. Rickon has green eyes, indicating powerful in the old magic. Rickon is clearly getting visions, the death of Ned, etc. Okay, so yes, I like this. This is a theory I've come across before. We've noted that Jojen and Meera go to Winterfell to find the winged wolf that is chained, not to go and find Bran. So they go up there. Obviously, wolves, they're going to go to the Starks. Bran is the person that they decide it is, not Rickon. However, Rickon may well have more powers. You're right, when Bran gets bad dreams and gets Maester Luwin to go down to the Winterfell crypts because the father's dead, Rickon's already there. Rickon has got the green eyes, or Shaggy Dog has, that imply green seer. And there are lots of clear implications that he is a very, very strongly talented warg and green seer with magical abilities. So I do not think that the idea that Rickon is incredibly powerful is mutually exclusive with the idea that Bran was the person that Jojen and Meera were sent to find. I think that that's entirely possible. Both those things are right. Because Bloodraven found Bran and met him in his dream and sent Jojen and Meera, or spoke to Howland. Howland sent Jojen and Meera looking for the person that Bloodraven found in his dream, and that was Bran. Rickon was just too young. Maybe in a couple of years' time it would have been Rickon, but I think it's entirely likely that both of those things are true. Theory number 2, Daemon One-Eye didn't die when the fall into the God's Eye Lake. No real textual proof, just that Fire and Blood mentions 3 times in short order that he couldn't have lived after the fall. Why labour the point if not to flip it around? Suspect that Bloodraven had visions from him during his time as Hand of the King, maybe before and after. I don't think either theory can be disproved, so to my scientific brain they're still an option. Well, just to pick up on that last point, yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of these cannot be disproved, but the way I approach this is to try and work out not just what cannot be disproved, but what is the most likely solution, the best working hypothesis we have going forward. That's my approach on these things. In terms of the second tinfoil theory came up with the Aemond One-Eye. This was the dragon battle above the God's Eye Lake that I was talking about before. Daemon, and this will appear almost certainly in House of the Dragon. Season 4 or 5 would probably be my guess. But that is Daemon Targaryen against Aemond One-Eye. And we're told the dragons killed each other and crashed down, and both riders died. Now, did Daemon survive? Well, they didn't find his body. We're told that 3 times. So yes, it's entirely possible that he escaped. But if we go from his character, he is one of the most charismatic and proactive people that George R. R. Martin has written about at all, full stop, anywhere. He is driven, he is capable, he is competent. If he did survive, he would have done something, is my take on his character. If he did survive, he wouldn't have just slunk away somewhere and go, oh, you know what, I've had enough. No, he's there, he's won his epic dragon battle. He's now going to go off and do something else. That's what the character of Daemon Targaryen is. If he did decide, you know what, that's it, I'm all done, I'm going, surely he would have met up again with Nettles, who was his lover. But we do see her again, and he's not there. So I think, yes, you cannot prove that he died. George R. R. Martin did not give us proof that he died, but the weight of evidence suggests that he did. I think that this is one of those cases, as we had before, where actually the flip should be the case, that somebody arguing that he's alive, it is the burden on them to give some evidence that he's alive, and there is no evidence that he's alive. There is evidence that he's dead. The Late Escapist theory that Theon will rule the Iron Islands by the end, not Asha. Asha has no lawful path to the Seastone chair. As Tris Botley said, she cannot challenge Euron's Kingsmoot because she participated in it. Theon's experiences are giving him all the right qualifications to be a good king. Also, Bran will probably teach Theon some green magic. Well, I think that Asha could, if Theon dies, then Asha could claim the throne. Sorry, if Theon dies. If Euron dies, as I think he will, then Asha could claim the throne. Theon, yeah, he could do, and it would provide a good end to what is possibly the only true redemption arc we're going to have in this story. But I also think him dying for the Starks, it happened on the show. It's not going to happen the same way in the books, but I think him dying for the Starks does work even better. As a sort of a fallback, I do kind of like the idea of them ruling together. Maybe she gets her tongue cut out and he cannot provide any heirs, but between the two of them, they could rule together. That it kind of works for me. This brother-sister ruling together. George R. Martin's played with it a few times. It would be surprising if it doesn't play a role in the main story. So, yeah, maybe Theon will rule. Maybe Asher will rule. I think the story could satisfactorily end either way. Sparkle Burner, do you plan on covering the new Lord of the Rings miniseries on Amazon? Yes. All the yeses. It's not going to be a miniseries. It's going to be a full new TV show set in the Second Age. They're nearly finished filming season 1. They've already booked in season 2. That's going to start up quite soon after they finished season 1. So I think we can probably expect it first quarter of next year would be my best guess. Will I be covering it? Yes, I will. Do not worry about that. I will be giving that the full coverage, assuming it's weekly. Then probably the same way that I covered Game of Thrones, Westworld, pre-show live stream, breakdown of episodes, and other content along the way. So that's my my plan. I'm some things like the Wheel of Time. I'm gonna hang out and wait for the trailer before making up my mind. But such a big Lord of the Rings fan that I definitely will be covering it. Final question from my patrons. So now is a good chance to drop things into the chat. I will try and answer as many questions in the chat as I possibly can. Julia Erickson saying, my theory is perhaps more of an observation than a theory. The pact is a very central part of what happens during the Long Night. The only other pact in the books that I can think of is the Pact of Ice and Fire, mentioned in Fire and Blood. The fact that it is referred to as a pact and the fact that it is between ice and fire immediately makes me think of the Long Night. Now, during the Pact of Ice and Fire, a potential strong was sent by the people of fire to close a deal with the people of ice, and the deal included a fire princess being sent up to the north to marry an ice king. Furthermore, a potential child was also left in the north after Jacaerys' visit. In Scandinavian languages, as well as German, Stark means strong. To me, it feels like George R. R. Martin could not resist playing on the fact that Stark means strong, and I think that potentially we could get hints about the pact during the Long Night by studying the Pact of Ice and Fire. I get a lot of the Last Hero and the 13th Lord Commander vibes from it. Yes, so a lot of stuff packed in there. In terms of, no pun intended, packed in there about the pact. The Pact of Ice and Fire, without doubt, is something that George R. R. Martin has included there for us to be aware of, to open our minds to the thought of a link between the Starks and the Targaryens. This is very much, in my mind, prefiguring the Lyanna and Rhaegar thing. Now, that was a proposed marriage between a Stark and a Targaryen that didn't happen. It tragically didn't happen, but Rhaegar and Lyanna did happen. So this is almost a fulfillment of what happened all that time ago. So that, I think, is the main thing we're trying to get there from that. I like the Stark strong thing. Yes, I agree with you, George R. R. Martin. He will have been aware that strong and Stark mean the same thing. But I mean, I don't think that the link across between how strong that it's being therefore an ice family is. I mean, it's there, but I don't think that's the important point in what we've got going on. I think the important point is the foreshadowing of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Mara Lee, thank you so much. Very generous of you, Mara. Thank you. I hugely appreciate that. Saying just a show of love and appreciation for all the fabulous content and the great stories on both channels. Will there be a Bloodraven t-shirt available for purchasing? Yeah, I keep on meaning to do it. Maybe this is going to be the week that I actually pull my finger out and try and sort that one out. But thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Yes, there will at some point be a Bloodraven. If in doubt, when in doubt, blame Bloodraven t-shirt. Just going to pick up a few random things from the chat. Natalie Alphonse, my tinfoil theory is that Rickon will sit on the Iron Throne. The Shaggy Dog story just being a red herring to distract from his importance. I love it. I think it would be one of those fantastic things. If he survives, it would take us all by surprise because of the very clear Shaggy Dog story meaning. And the fact that he obviously died on the show, yeah, it would be a huge turn up. But if he does, fair play to him, really. Sparkle Burner just saying thank you for your content. Thank you very much. There's a few people saying they would buy a Bloodraven t-shirt. Excellent. Fodder for foreshadowing, saying, I have found mentions of Varys being a woman. When Kat meets him, she says he giggles like a girl. In Kevin's epilogue, he says of himself to be going on like an old woman. Thoughts? I think this is him playing with the eunuch thing, the I'm not a man. So, yeah, I think that's all that is. I don't think there's any more going on. Joseph Potty saying, do you think the reaction to the end of the series will impact any of George's writings? I mean, he says no, and I think no. He more than any of us will be aware of the extent to which what he had planned was shown on TV. My guess from what he has said is that he's very clear that yes, the big beats, as he calls them, are the same. Lots of the details are different, and he very, very strongly said he felt it could have been extended further. So the clear implication of that was that he thought that a lot of the storylines were squashed or cut out. So will it change? No, I think he'll just want to do the ending that he was going to do anyway. He has a reasonably clear idea in his mind of the ending. I know he keeps on talking about being a Gardner writer, but at this stage of the story, he's got a reasonably clear idea of the ending. I think that he will just want to do it right. And those bits of ending, the big beats we saw, could be brilliant if they are done right. They weren't done right in the time given to them by the show. Andrew Kay saying they better release the Second Age show, the Lord of the Rings Second Age show, weekly. A full season drop of that would be a ridiculously bad decision. I think they will do it weekly from what I've seen so far, but yeah, Jeff Bezos talked about wanting to have weekly must-see TV, which seems to imply that that's, given the fact that this is going to be the flagship thing for them, I think that's pretty clear. Andrew Kay saying, I'll talk to Reflective Rambling, not sure about how the North will be given autonomy in the books without other regions asking the same, so not sure I see a Northern monarch of any kind. My take on that one is very simply that the Great Council, it didn't look like it was a Great Council on the show, but it effectively was, of the however many people they had there, 15 nobles hanging around deciding that Bran should be king. That was overwhelmingly stacked towards the Starks. They had Bran there, they had Sansa there, they had Arya there, they had Brienne, who had been sworn to Sansa. They had Davos, who'd been handed the king to Jon. They had Sam, who was Jon's best mate. They had, what looked like another random Northern Lord in there. Everything was there. They had Sweet Robin there, Robert Arryn, who was basically, we know that he will follow Sansa's lead. So this was stacked overwhelmingly in their favor, and I think that is what is going to happen on a larger scale at the end of A Song of Ice and Fire. The Starks are going to be the house with the strength at the end of all of this, and they will get to decide stuff. Sansa was allowed to have independence for her region because Bran decided that was okay. Bran would have said no to everyone else. Okay, so I think with that, I am going to draw this one to a close. I think I'll try another slightly different one again next week. I enjoyed this as a different take on the way that we normally do things rather than just focusing on the subject. So maybe we'll go something else, slight angle. Again, if you are watching this a bit later, drop a thought down in the comments if there's something in particular you think that we should be covering here. Lord of the Rings ones will be starting at some point in the next month or two, but we'll stick with A Song of Ice and Fire only for the moment, I think. Okay, with that, if you are watching this back later, somewhere up here will be appearing a link to other live streams if you'd like to watch that. Appearing somewhere around here is going to be appearing a link to my Patreon page if you'd like to support this channel. And that's the best way to do it. There's also a link down in the description. Okay, everyone, take care. I shall see you again this time next week. Bye now.